Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe. Very thrilled to welcome Cody Dericks from Next Best Picture back to the podcast today for the season finale episode of Film at 50. The last time we're talking about the movies of 1972. We're going to talk about the highest grossing movies of the year, a little bit about the Golden Globes, mostly about the 45th Academy Awards. And I'm going to end the episode with my personal top 10 films of 1972. How are we doing, Cody?
Doing well. I never questioned this, but is the official term for 50 years semi-centennial?
I don't think so. I was just trying to find like a cool way to open every episode, and I love my alliteration. I'm an English teacher. And it's even better than centennial because there's more S's. Semi-centennial.
Semi-centennial.
It's if you look up, did I go to the thesaurus? I'm trying to think of how I found it, but I was like, ooh, I like that because it goes well with cinema.
Okay.
But yeah, yes. It's probably not the most technical term. It's not something that everybody would use. I don't know if like when people celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, if they're calling it
our
semi-centennial, because that would imply that they will stay married for 100 years. I don't know if has anyone made it to 100.
I'm trying. I don't plan to die, so I think I can do it.
I'm sure someone's made it to 90, right? A couple has made it to 90 years together. I feel like that must have happened.
It would require marrying very young.
My great grandparents, I think, made it to 70. That was pretty big.
Damn. Good job. Good job, bros.
But yeah, semi-centennials. And this episode's airing at the end of January. So we're actually in 2023.
Ooh.
Cody, looking back on the year in film that was 1972. I can give a few more final punches if I want. But mostly today we're talking about the best of the best. And I always start with the highest grossing films of 1972. I think it's fun to look at like what was really popular with audiences 50 years ago and compare it to now, where it's like these big event movies can make $1 billion, but then anything else opens with 4 million at the box office.
Yeah, like, truly.
What's happening?
No in between.
What is happening in our current state of big movies at the box office and what we're seeing, what we're definitely not seeing. But when it comes to the year of 1972, you know what number 10 was?
I do because I have the list in front of me. You have the list. So I'm cheating. I can't pretend.
This is a film I did not do an episode for. I like some of it. I think the segment with Gene Wilder and the sheep is funny.
The sheep. Yep.
And of course, the very final segment is famous. Like that's with Burt Reynolds and, human semen.
Well,
and all of its eccentricities and how it's depicted at the end of that movie. It just wasn't great enough to warrant doing a whole episode about it. We will probably talk about Sleeper next year because that's a pretty funny movie, but Woody Allen, he's not the most in favor person right now, so I don't know when we'll get to that film. But the number 10 film of 72 was Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex, but Were Afraid to Ask. Isn't that the whole title?
That is asterisk included. Parentheses and everything.
They didn't add that second part on Wikipedia in the highest grossing. It just wasn't enough room to include that. Do you think that if that were released in 2020, if that had been released in 2022, would that have been a top 10 of the year?
So what this would do in 2022, it would tumble onto Hulu. You would hear about it 2 weeks later when somebody tweeted something like, why is nobody talking about this movie? And then you watch it and you go, it was okay. And then you never think about it again.
It would quietly drop on Hulu like April 9th.
Yes. When you're
and like, oh, 2 weeks later, nobody would be talking about it.
No.
That apparently made $8 million in 1972 dollars. That's pretty good for that film.
I would guess that like half of that gross is from people just intrigued by the title.
Right. Like I could see that like walking down a sidewalk and that is on the marquee, like in front of the theater.
Yeah.
I bet some people thought it was like a porno film.
I mean, quite a long textbooky title for a porn, but
right. I mean, it wouldn't be the best title for a porno film that's trying to pull in audiences, but some people were probably confused.
Sure. The 70s were weird though, so you never know.
So so that does well. Lady Sings the Blues is number 9.
Mm-hmm.
That makes about 9 million. And we talked about that in October. Terrific film.
That makes sense.
The Getaway makes sense that would be a hit. Like Steve McQueen, Ally McGraw, kind of an action chase movie released in December that came in at about 18 million.
Okay.
Number
I don't know anything
7.
about that movie, so that's good to know.
I think you'd like The Getaway. I talked about it with my pal Jordan Downey at the beginning of December. And I mean, you have to kind of like Steve McQueen, like he's the star and he's a certain kind of screen personality. He's not the most like emotive actor.
Sure.
So you kind of have to kind of go with it. But Sam Peckinpah made it. He's a great action director. And so I enjoyed it. Number 7 is a movie we did not talk about on the podcast, and that's Deep Throat.
Oh boy.
So this is the
Why
only
didn't
time
you talk
you'll
about
hear
this in the podcast?
I just didn't think it was appropriate for me in my line of work to do an hour and a half talking about Deep Throat. I have never seen this movie. Have you seen Deep Throat?
I have not seen Deep Throat, no.
But I did see, I want to say it was 2005. I was living in LA. I was in college, and a documentary came out in 2005 called Inside Deep Throat.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in a theater in LA, and it had a lot of clips from the movie, and it talked about the making of it. And it was very interesting. And I was like, whoa.
I just love that this isn't the top 10 of the year. Like, I love that. Above a Billie Holiday biopic.
Yeah. So people were deciding between a Billie Holiday biopic and Deep Throat, and deciding on Deep Throat more than double, because
Deep Throat could have been the name of
20.
Singer's biopic, about like their vocal cords, their ability to sing.
Right. Was there
like that
a recent no, it was good. It was good. Was there something about the star of this movie in the last 5 to 10 years? I feel like there was
starring Amanda Seyfried.
Was it Amanda Seyfried?
I believe so.
Is it Fried or Fred?
Linda Lovelace.
Linda Lovelace,
Seyfried?
that's what it was.
Yeah.
And was that like a Sundance movie, I think, or it was like a festival film?
Yeah, Sundance.
Okay.
It sounds like a Sundance movie.
I never saw it. Was it good?
Nope. I did not see it either, so I cannot tell you.
Well, our expertise on that movie, it just like popped in my head. I was like, wait, wasn't there something tied into Deep Throat that came out recently? What year was that? Does that say?
2013?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So it's been a while.
Like
so 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy to think 2013 is now 10 years ago. It just doesn't seem like that long ago. Number 6 is Cabaret. I would have thought Cabaret would be higher up. That came out in February. So it had the whole year to bring in big box office. Cabaret made only a little bit more than Deep Throat. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it's less than $1 million difference between them, according to this list.
Like, I always thought Cabaret was more popular than that. I knew it wasn't going to be like this huge blockbuster, but I feel like 20 million seems low for that movie.
I thought the same thing, but I'm guessing it's just had an amazing legacy in terms of the awards it won and how well regarded it still is, that kind of overshadows the box office. Not that it did poorly. I mean, number 6 of the year is
right. No, it's not
most movies to hope for.
But I mean, the top film is 86 million.
Mm-hmm.
You think that Cabaret could have gotten at least half of that money,
right? 86 million, which is more than double what the second place one,
right?
Earned.
So yeah, and you don't have to think too hard when you get to the
no.
earner of the year. But probably the biggest surprise in this list for me, and we just talked about it, was last week's episode. That was our last 72 episode. We talked about Jeremiah Johnson,
mm-hmm.
and it's fine. That movie making 21 million is surprising to me, and I think it's just Robert Redford's star power.
Yeah, I don't really know much about this movie besides that one GIF of Robert Redford that gets used all the time.
My guess was he freaked out.
Legacy.
My guess freaked out when he got to that shot of the movie, because
mm-hmm.
he'd been seeing that for his whole life, and he went, "Oh, that's from this."
It doesn't look like Redford, so I guess that
nod. And that came out at the end of December of 72. So I guess it just kind of hung on throughout the spring of 73. People must have just kept going back to it. And it was, we talked about in the episode, it was my 7th grade history teacher's favorite movie. And he showed it to us going, I think instead of like a Christmas movie in December, he showed us Jeremiah Johnson. That was my introduction to it. And so it's like the favorite film of a lot of a lot of people, and it, like, if you saw, I think you saw it at a certain age in 72, it just kind of stuck with you. So that did better than I realized. That did very well. Deliverance is number 4. That makes sense to me. I know we we differed on our thoughts of Deliverance, but I thought it was really great, and I could see that doing well in the late summer of 72. So that made about 22 million.
Kind of similar in terms of like content to Jeremiah Johnson.
Right? I mean, Deliverance.
I haven't seen Jeremiah Johnson myself, but
there's no pig squealing in Jeremiah Johnson.
Okay.
But no, they're different. They're similar in setting for sure.
Setting, right?
But Jeremiah Johnson's a period film, and Deliverance was just a modern day movie, right? That was like set in the early 70s,
right?
And there's a lot more action, visceral action in Deliverance than there was in Jeremiah Johnson, which is a quieter kind of wilderness drama.
Okay.
But I mean, they're both strong films. I just prefer Deliverance. And then I love that What's Up, Doc got number 3. Like, I could see that movie doing better than expected, but that movie coming in at 28 million for 72 is kind of surprising to me. I think it has to do with Barbara Streisand.
Yeah, definitely.
But Barbara Streisand is in a movie late in 1972 called Up the Sandbox, which I watched about a week ago. I was trying to get through like the last of the star power movies that I hadn't seen yet. And I'm going, each year I try to see all the Barbara Streisand stuff because I like her. And it was unusual, but entertaining. And so why does that movie just completely fall through the cracks? But What's Up, Doc comes out in February, and that's a huge hit. Kind of interesting.
I've never even heard of Up the Sandbox, it's called. It's a bad title, first of all.
Probably not a great title.
No.
I want to say it's one of her first films where it's just like she's just playing a modern day woman. There's nothing zany or fantastical about the plot. It's just like a modern day drama. It was probably her first stab at like, maybe I could get an Oscar nomination after, of course, Funny Girl, but like for a more modern movie, like maybe that kind of an idea. But didn't quite work.
Didn't happen.
But that's a great movie. Have you seen What's Up, Doc?
I have not. I wanted to get around to it, but I didn't get the.
I had Alonso Duralde from The Wrap on to talk about that movie last February, and that was a fun chat. And I had never seen it before. It's Peter Bogdanovich, the movie he directed in between The Last Picture Show and Paper Moon. So like 2 black and white dramas, and then in between he makes this kind of zany romantic comedy. Number 2 is The Poseidon Adventure. That made 42 million. That was a huge blockbuster hit in December of 72. And that was another movie I'd never seen before. I'd seen clips, but I'd never seen the whole thing. And that was a blast to watch that for the first time. Some really cool visual effects that are kind of ahead of its time. Like the scene towards the beginning of the ship falling over looks really good for 72.
I think the whole thing looks great. Like the production design, the visual effects. I think it's a really handsomely made film.
Yeah. And we had Dave White on that episode. It's one of his favorite movies, also from The Wrap and Linoleum Knife, and really great chat. And it was a fun movie. I really had a good time with that. It makes sense that would have been in the number 2 slot. Number 1 of the year, I of course it's one of the most famous movies of all time, one of the most beloved movies. I forget that The Godfather was this much of a blockbuster. 86
seriously. That's wild.
Is that like, does that take into account its later re-releases? I wonder.
I was thinking the same thing, but even if it only made like $20 million less than what it is currently grossed at, that's still huge for 1972.
Because I feel like The Godfather got re-released often throughout the 70s. I want to say it wasn't just it didn't just play once.
I imagine so, but again, I mean, like as is, it made more than double what The Poseidon Adventure made at number 2. So just huge blockbuster.
Yeah, so now it makes even more sense why we have a sequel in 74, because they were like, let's do another one.
Seriously, yeah.
But man, when you read up on all of the behind the scenes of how Francis Ford Coppola was almost fired from that film, and everything that could have gone wrong with the casting and everything, and that how just everything gelled, everything worked, and then it became this blockbuster hit. That's really cool. So that's the number 1
I love
film.
the phenomenon of the number 1 grossing film of the year later wins Best Picture. It's like, what more could you ask for a movie? You made a ton of money. You won Best Film of the Year from the most prestigious awards body. Just the best he can do.
Kind of like the Titanic of its day, like the biggest
Titanic, Lord of the
blockbuster movie.
Rings. Yeah. It's been a
Transformers,
while since this happened.
Transformers, Revenge of the
Of
Fallen in
course. Yeah, best
09.
picture
Remember?
winner. That won the Palme d'Or, actually.
Remember
People
when
forget that.
the Transformers sequel, I think it made like 450 million in the summer of 09, and then it went on to win Best Picture and Best Director.
Yes, as we know.
And there was all sorts of talk about Shia LaBeouf, does he go lead or supporting? And thankfully he went supporting because he won too.
Thank God. Oof. Yeah, that was a tight race between him and Bumblebee. Is Bumblebee a Transformer?
I remember watching that movie and saying, like, life is too short to watch this.
Yeah, I think that came out like on my 18th birthday, and I was like, I don't need to do that.
Like some of these movies that, you know, get to 400 million and you're like, well, was there nothing else out? Okay.
Truly.
We'll go with it. So those were the top 10 films of the year. Quite an interesting list of all sorts of different genres, and it's not like today where, I mean, is the top 10 of 2022 just 10 giant blockbusters? Is there anything that kind of cracked,
oh boy,
like
I can't
got
even
through the cracks that isn't like a gigantic, you know,
I'm trying to even think of
super
what would be
high budget movie? Like, of course, top 10 would be like Top Gun Maverick and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Avatar The Way of Water.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list now, and
like, is there anything in there that we didn't predict would be in the top 10? Like, is there something in there that wasn't as big of a budget that's snuck in?
Well,
Nope.
this is no. I mean,
Nope.
I'm looking at the international ones. That makes things a little different. But like every single one of these movies has a colon in the title, basically, which goes to show you
so that's
how franchisey they are.
Is that the new? It has to have a colon somewhere, or it will not.
Right.
You're right. All three of those movies I just mentioned have a colon.
Top Gun, Avatar, Jurassic Park, Doctor Strange, Minions. You know, the things you'd expect.
Nothing so really. It's all about here. The colon now and not the number.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
If these films had been called Black Panther 2, Avatar 2, and Top Gun 2, do you think they'd be received any different?
There is a kind of like old-fashionedness to a number in a title. You know, you don't really see that a lot anymore.
Yeah, I it's funny. I feel like when it has just a number in the title, awards season feels maybe a slightly bit out of reach. If it's like Avatar 2 versus Avatar The Way of Water.
But then
there's more prestige.
The Godfather Part 2.
There's that, but I'm talking like today.
Sure. I know. We had Toy Story 3. That's probably the last one with a number in its title.
Right. Like Christopher Nolan, he could have called it Batman Begins 2. But he said, no, we're going to make this more prestige-y and get it into Best Picture. Let's call it The Dark Knight.
Right.
And it didn't work.
Got into Best Picture. Wait, hold on.
God, why didn't that make it? All right. So those are the top 10 films of 72. Now we move on to the Golden Globes, which by the time this drops will have aired, Cody. I think it's January 10th.
Yes.
I'm very curious, like, how's that show going to go down? I believe it's a Tuesday. So I'm like,
yeah, of course it is. Sure. Like, NBC says you can have it Tuesday.
Is everyone going to show up? I mean, we'll know by now. We'll see. But
I wonder if maybe that's why they're putting it on a Tuesday, so that when most people don't show up because of its whatever controversies, they can go, well, it was a Tuesday.
It was a Tuesday, and people were working. They were busy. That's why we only got 3 people to show up, and it was a very brief hour ceremony.
Right, and it was just Jamie Lee Curtis in 3 different wigs.
Jamie Lee Curtis accepting for everybody.
You know she's showing up.
Jamie, if there was one person you know it will be there, it's Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes, absolutely.
I love her, but boy, she is going to every last gasp of this Everything Everywhere All at Once award season jaunt. She's going to be there for every second. Even if she doesn't get the Oscar nomination, she'll still be tweeting about the movie all the way to the last day.
She'll get it. I know we said we wouldn't talk about the Oscars from this year because it's dangerous, but it's happening.
Okay, well, I think you're right. I think she will, but because that category is so just crazy right now, so we'll see. All right, so Golden Globes, new star of the year goes to Edward Albert for Butterflies Are Free.
Okay.
Which is a summer release with Goldie Hawn, Eileen Heckart, which we'll get to. She won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. as the mom. And then he's kind of the main character of the movie. He's blind, trying to live his life in New York City as a blind man. And his mom's coming to visit often. She's like, I don't feel safe with you here. I want to bring you home. And Goldie Hawn is kind of like his roommate, or she like lives like in the apartment next to his, share a wall. And so they have a lot of chats together, and she kind of starts falling for him. And so that's nice. None of these other names, maybe Kevin Hooks for Sounder would have been my choice. I thought he was really great as the younger actor in Sounder.
Sure. Yeah.
I've never heard of When the Legends Die.
No, but Frederick Forrest does later become an Oscar nominee for The Rose. So he goes on to do some things. But that's about it.
Slaughterhouse-Five, we talked about that film. And my main issue was I felt that Michael Sachs didn't have a lot of screen presence.
Okay. Oops.
But he's here. And then the last film I looked at before we came on here was Monday. I looked at about 20 minutes of Young Winston, which got 3 Oscar nominations. So I felt like I should look at some of it, but it's a period film and it's Richard Attenborough. And I was like, I don't have the time for that.
Yeah, it sounds kind of boring.
It was kind of slow. I flipped to a clip of Anne Bancroft about halfway through, and I kind of enjoyed her performance in it, but it's like 2 hours 20. And I was just like, I got to look at some modern films because it's the end of the year too. So yeah, that's a good win for Edward Albert. For female, it was Diana Ross for Lady Sings the Blues.
It's kind of funny to call her a new star. I understand because it's an early, if not her first film. I don't know if it's her debut, but it's definitely, she's new to Hollywood, but
right.
She's not a new star.
If you were like a huge, that'd be like giving like Lady Gaga new star of the year for
Star is Born.
For Star is Born. That would have felt wrong to you?
I think yes. I think it's like cheating.
And then, like, is there anyone else here? Madeline Kahn.
Well, there's Marsha Berenson from Cabaret.
Her first film is What's Up, Doc? And she's hilarious. She's got a few very funny scenes in that movie. I was so excited when I got to my first Madeline Kahn performance for Film at 50. I was like, Madeline Kahn is here to stay, because she's got Paper Moon and some Mel Brooks
Blazing
stuff coming.
Saddles.
One of the great Oscar nominations of the 70s. Madeline Kahn, Best Supporting Actress for Blazing Saddles.
It's great. I love it.
How did that get a nomination? I love it. A movie I believe came out in January.
Maybe. I've never seen Blazing Saddles, so I will take your word for it. I know.
Yeah, so I believe Blazing Saddles comes out in January or February of 74, and then Young Frankenstein is like Christmas of 74. So his 2 most beloved movies, that's maybe the producers too, come out in the same calendar year, which I always find really interesting.
That's amazing. And
Madeline Kahn's great in Young Frankenstein, but she's nominated for Blazing Saddles, which is great. Victoria Principal, she was pretty slight in Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. That's a kind of a surprising one. The Great Waltz, I don't know that film.
No, I don't know any other movies here besides Cabaret.
You'll Like My Mother. You didn't watch You'll Like My Mother?
It's a horror movie. That's cool.
Is that a horror film?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I might have looked that up at some point. Is that Patty Duke?
Starring Patty Duke, yep.
Okay, I looked it up at some point. I tried to get to some horror films. There were 5 to 10 from 72 that I didn't get to. That was one of them. Now maybe I'll have to check it out. Let's see. So we're not going to go through every nominee here, but I just want Best Original Score goes to The Godfather, which we'll talk about, was nominated at the Oscars, and then it wasn't.
Kind of. It got alone, yet not alone.
It was pulled from the nominations list. Best Original Song goes to Ben from Ben. Have you heard this song by Michael Jackson?
I know the song Ben. Amazing that it wins of 8 nominees. That's a lot.
8 nominees. So I had heard this song before. Like, my friend from college had like an album of a bunch of Michael Jackson stuff, and I'd heard this song. And then we're watching the sequel to Willard, a horror film called Ben about a rat, and that's the movie it's in.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Wins the Golden Globe. It's a very nice song, but it's in a very cheesy horror film. Very strange.
I don't think I realized that Ben was a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not scary. It's like, I
listen
call
to
it
the
a horror
song
film.
Ben, and you don't think of it as like coming from
Like
horror,
there's
but
people die in the movie. There's blood.
okay.
Willard's
Weird.
better. The first one's better.
Strange.
Supporting actor goes to Joel Grey for Cabaret, which will carry over to the Oscars. But most of these nominations are different from the Oscars. The only carryover I want to say is James Caan
Yeah.
for The Godfather. James
Right.
Coco, I did not watch all of Man of La Mancha, but I went on YouTube and I watched, they had like the movie clips. They had like 10. And I sat there and watched all 10 of the movie clips. And it was a rough go for
That's a
those
bad
20
movie.
minutes.
Yeah, that's my least favorite movie of the year. It's
Is that
not
your least
good.
favorite movie?
Mm-hmm.
And your least favorite one of 73 is A Touch of Class, right?
Yes. My least favorite Best Picture nominee of all time.
Winner of Best
movie.
Actress.
She's fine. It's not her fault.
I had a guest recently who said, has anyone snapped up the Touch of Class episode yet? And I said, I might have been on the episode. I said, well, one person who doesn't want to do that one, trust me, is Cody Dericks.
I don't want it. don't
just have you just angry the whole time.
Yeah, you have to edit out my screams.
So yeah, like The Ruling Class I didn't love, but that was the better movie with Peter O'Toole for 72. I'm glad that translated to the Oscar nomination, because I believe, I have to look here, I think he's nominated at the Golden Globes for Man of La Mancha. Those are two very like big Oscar-y movies to have in the same year for one actor, right?
And both long movies.
Very long. Yeah.
Where's the time?
The time. Let's see. And then Avanti's nominated and winning things here. It's very upsetting because that movie, that's one of the, I don't really talk about the worst films of the year. I don't have that list at the end here,
sure.
But Avanti's really bad.
I haven't seen it. I kind of wanted to get around to it. A, because I love Billy Wilder and Jack Lemmon, and B, because I think it holds the record for most Golden Globe either wins or nominations
to not get anything at the Oscar.
Single Oscar nomination.
Oh, that would make sense. I think it's at least 4 or 5 nominations. 4 or 5. Right? And I believe Jack Lemmon wins Best Actor for Musical or Comedy. Yeah, it was like huge showing at the Golden Globes and then nothing at the Oscars.
Nothing.
Sometimes I'm very happy when that happens. When there's something I'm like, this doesn't belong at the Oscars, and then they do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they say, nope, that's not happening. And then Alec McCowan for Travels with My Aunt. That episode will have just aired a few weeks ago. Really interesting Maggie Smith drama / comedy. He was also an actor. I didn't find that he had a lot of presence in the movie, but here he is in the movie,
and I don't know anything about him. So
it's won the Oscar for costumes. If you wanted to see some amazing Maggie Smith kind of hamming it up, playing a much older person than she was at the time, which was like, it's like Maggie Smith's thing. She's always playing old.
All I know about it is that the makeup on her is a little frightening.
It's very strange.
Okay.
But then there's flashbacks in the movie to her younger, and then she just looks like herself, and it's fine.
Okay.
Supporting actress goes to Shelley Winters for The Poseidon Adventure. That is a cool win. She's great in the movie.
That is a cool win. And the Oscar winner is not even nominated. So
that's right. The Oscar winner is not even here. What happened there? What happened between the Golden Globes and the Oscars where they shifted to someone else?
They liked Butterflies Are Free. They gave it a bunch of nominations. So
yeah, Goldie Hawn is nominated in Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical. Eileen Heckert wins the Oscar, but she's not here at the Golden Globes, even nominated. Strange. So where did that shift happen? I'd be curious, because it's a great performance she gives in the movie. If you watch that movie, you would not nominate it for everything else. Best New Star of the Year male, give it to him. Nominate Goldie Hawn, but Eileen Heckert, just leave her off.
Right.
For Helena something in Kansas City Bomber.
Don't know that one.
Like what? Like who was like, okay, Eileen Heckert almost got in, but we gotta award Kansas City Bomber or something.
For a movie, it's a movie about a roller derby, it looks like.
I promise I try to see as much as I can. I don't get to everything. I didn't get to Kansas City Bomber. Let's see, Jeannie Berlin for Heartbreak Kid. That's a very funny performance and gets into the Oscars too. Marissa Berenson in Cabaret. Which character is that in Cabaret?
She is the I'm so sorry, I haven't seen Cabaret in a little bit. She is the
one
that the
ago.
other guy is courting. She's
Okay,
rich. She's
like the
taking
one,
English
it's like
lessons.
one other kind of strong female role in the movie. Like it has
Exactly.
like a bunch of
Exactly.
scenes. Okay,
Yes.
so she gets in here, and then Geraldine Page. That episode will have just dropped for Pete and Tilly. Geraldine Page is barely in this movie. Have you seen Pete and Tilly?
Really? I have not. It's like really hard to find. I tried to find
It's
it.
on YouTube.
Okay.
I think
Good
that's
to
how we
know.
watched it. But so she's like the friend of Carol Burnett, and she's very just big and wild, and she wears big hats, and she's at lunch and she's hamming it up. She's in
Gotcha.
maybe 2 lunch scenes at the beginning. Then she's gone for an hour plus. The movie's about Walter Matthau and
Mm.
Carol Burnett and their relationship. And then Geraldine Page comes back for one scene at the end, and she's hilarious. And it's this big, kind of broad comedic scene at the very end, right before the end credits. And that's the scene that got her in at the Golden Globes and the Oscars. They love Geraldine Page.
They did, and I do wish that more performances of that length and brevity were nominated nowadays. I feel like that's
You don't see that now. Like
no.
someone who's in 2 big scenes of a movie. Like I think David Lynch should be considered for the
Yes.
Fablemans. He's great, but it's
Or
one scene of what,
mhm.
2 minutes? It's
Right,
like
which
you
is
can't.
ridiculous because it's like where else are they supposed to go at the Oscars? Are they just not considered? I guess not.
Like Judd Hirsch is in 7 minutes of that movie, maybe 8,
Something like
and
that.
he got
Yeah.
in at Critics' Choice. We'll see what happens there. Like that, I think it's possible, but I do think nowadays you have to be in more of the movie to get that
Yeah, you
Oscar
basically have
nom.
to be a co-lead, a smaller co-lead.
When Brad Pitt's winning for one Once Upon a Time in Hollywood
Sure.
as supporting, it's like it's hard to compete with that if you have one scene. But David Lynch, come on,
Mhm.
you.
Please. I agree. I'm with you.
I don't think I've ever reacted to anything in a theater like I did to that scene because I love him. He's one of my favorite directors, and I knew he was in the movie. I got to the movie not knowing who he played or what. I thought, is he just like a narrator or something?
Mhm.
I didn't know he played John Ford at the end, and
See, I'd
that was
forgotten that
like,
he was in the movie, and then he shows up in the last 5 minutes, and I was like, "Oh my god, right? Hello."
like I could sense the movie was ending, and then he's like in John Ford's office. We see all of the posters, and I went, oh, is that the David Lynch role? Is
Yeah,
he John Ford? And he just like hit that out of the park. That was
it's
so
great. It's so good.
great. That what he says to him to kick him out of the room is so hilarious. And then you find out later that that was word for word what the real John Ford said to Spielberg when he was 17. I'm like, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I believe in those one scene performances. Beatrice Straight Network. Give me more of those. I like those nominations.
hmm
Okay, and then we get to comedy or musical. Jack Lemmon wins for Avanti. It is a bad performance in a terrible, boring movie, and I do
Oh,
not understand at all. There's nothing he's doing in that movie
oh
that's of
no.
interest.
And
Like,
that's my dude. I love
why
Jack
would
Lemmon.
that? Oh, I love Jack Lemmon. I adore him, and that movie doesn't work at all. It's not his fault. It's the
It's not his
screenplay.
fault.
But there's nothing he's doing in that movie that's like, oh, we need to award him best actor. That's very
Sure.
strange. You watch it and maybe you'll have a different reaction to it.
I probably won't.
My guess, Marcus Gorman's also a huge Billy Wilder fan. He maybe had seen the movie once before, but we both were kind of down on it. So
Hmm.
I'd be curious if you were to be like, Brian, I watched Avanti and 4 stars.
Masterpiece.
It's like it's not very funny and it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. I think if it was 90
Oh
minutes, I would have
no.
liked it more.
Yeah, I just saw the
It's not, there's
runtime.
nothing in there that's worthy of it being that long.
hmm
So Edward Albert's there again for Butterflies Are Free. Charles Grodin for The Heartbreak Kid. Just that was a weird performance of like, I never liked him in the movie. And I don't think Elaine May, the director, wants you to like him, but
No, definitely not.
you have to. It couldn't be a Warren Beatty. It couldn't be like some charismatic guy in the lead in that movie. It had to be someone kind of smarmy. And
A little
so
slimy.
he's slimy. And then Walter Matthau's fine and Pete and Tilly, and then Peter O'Toole for Man of La Mancha. So if I had to pick someone here, I think I'd pick Charles Grodin.
I know. I mean, I've only seen a few of these, but I don't disagree.
Yeah, that's not the strongest category. And then
It rarely is.
actress goes to Liza Minnelli. Shocker.
hmm
That would have been shocking to me if like Juliet Mills won for Avanti over Liza Minnelli. That would have not aged well. So they made the right choice. I really adored Carol Burnett and Pete and Tilly. Like that's an actress. I've seen her in very few movies. Like we know of her as like a
Sure.
personality, tug in the ear. And
Right.
I've
This is
never
probably one of her
really,
few nominations for a film in
yeah,
anything.
like the only other movie that she's maybe famous for is Annie from 82. Like she's in
Yeah.
that, but she's doesn't have a long list of film credits on her resume. And it's a dramatic role. Like it's not a comedic performance. It's a dramatic performance. There's loss, there's grief in the movie, and she's terrific in the whole thing. And as I talked about in my episode recently, it kind of doesn't sit well with me that Geraldine Page gets an Oscar nomination for one funny scene at the end, and Carol Burnett is bringing it for the whole movie, like doing great work, and she doesn't get in for Best Actress. So I was like, okay, interesting choice. But Best Actress, as always, was competitive.
Sure. I was gonna say this year especially.
This year was tough. Like, who do we leave out? I mean, it's a really good category this year, so that's part of it. We could have just called her the supporting actress.
Maybe. Is it like possible that they could have stuck
her
her in that?
story, but you could argue that Walter Matthau is like the more famous person in 72. Like maybe we could call him lead and her supporting, but she's in the whole movie. It'd be hard to argue that. But she should have shown up somewhere. I liked her in that movie. And then Maggie Smith for Travels with My Aunt, she gets in. Goldie Hawn does not get in for the Oscars. She's really great, and Butterflies Are Free. I bet Goldie Hawn got close.
I agree. Yeah.
Eileen Heckart wins Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars, so they love the movie, or at least liked it. I think Goldie Hawn was probably in 6th or 7th place for the nomination.
And she was very in at the time.
Yeah. She had won for Cactus Flower
just a few
3 years
earlier.
before. And she'd had a couple flops in between, but then Butterflies Are Free was like, I want to say her first like big breakthrough, like after Cactus Flower in terms of box office. Like that movie did well and people liked it. So and then when in the drama categories, Marlon Brando wins Best Actor for The Godfather. That's expected. I like that Al Pacino is here because he is the lead of that movie. He's not a supporting actor. As we get to the Oscars, John Voight for Deliverance. We talked about that performance. I thought that was a pretty good performance and should have been considered more for Oscar, but again, a very tough category. And then we get both guys from Sleuth, who did you I did not like Sleuth, Cody.
Oh no, really? Yeah. I did like Sleuth. Yeah.
Sleuth was tough.
A long time ago, but I liked it.
That was the biggest disappointment of the year on Film at 50 for
that's
me.
A bummer.
Like that was like I was looking forward to it. I'd been watching a lot of kind of mediocre films in late October, early November, and then we got to the Sleuth episode, and I was so happy and excited. It's nominated for Best Director. Both guys get in for actor, and I found it a slog. Like it just was so. It's just two guys in a room for 2 hours 20 minutes talking, and I'm like, I wanted that world to open up a little bit. I was like,
I like the twists. I think it's twisty and fun.
The reveal of Michael Caine in that makeup was obvious to me from minute 1. So I'm like, am I supposed to not know that?
Work, but
anyway, but they're both great actors, so I'm okay with them being here. Best Director goes to Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather. That will not translate at the Oscars, which I feel like that's like, you know, in Scream when they said, who's the killer in Friday the 13th? And you jump up and you shout Jason as the most obvious answer to a movie question ever, and you find out you're wrong. I feel like most people would assume that Coppola won Best Director for The Godfather, right?
I mean, yeah, and I'm just checking now. He also won the DGA, so
he was definitely the front runner.
Close.
I would say he was probably the front runner to win Best Director for the first Godfather at the Oscars.
I would assume so.
And just didn't quite make it over Bob Fosse. I really love this director category at the Golden Globes outside of Billy Wilder for Avanti. That should not be there. But as we talked about on our Frenzy episode last summer, I really loved what Hitchcock did on Frenzy. That was kind of his last really creative burst of directing for a movie. So that would have been the legacy director nomination, the Oscars for me, over Joseph L. Mankiewicz for Sleuth. I think Hitchcock should have taken that slot instead.
Even if it was just him by himself. like
Yeah,
no
just
other
one.
representation for the movie.
Like a Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet kind of
Exactly.
movie.
Yeah. I think we made the exact same comparison on our Frenzy episode.
But even if you love Sleuth, I don't really know what is. I guess you could talk about his working with the actors, but in terms of like visually, there's nothing that interesting about Sleuth.
I think
Why does
that's
that get best
just
director?
we know your name, you're a legend,
All
you're
about
in the
Eve.
twilight
Yeah.
of your career. Exactly.
Yeah. And he said, I've read a quote from him saying, like at the time, he said, if Sleuth does well, I'm going to hang it up. And not only did very well, but he got a nomination and the movie did well. So he said, okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool that he went. Not very many directors, right, go out on a movie that they get nominated for at the Oscars. I would say that's pretty rare.
Sure. Yeah.
Like their last movie gets them a director nomination.
Yeah. I can't even think of any.
Can't imagine he's the only one, but I bet that's pretty rare. Hitchcock did not take it for family plot.
Bummer. Ooh.
It could happen to Tarantino because he's been saying he would hang it up after 10.
Right. Well, he's made it clear. Here's my plan. So,
and now I want to say 3 years on after Once Upon a Time, I feel like he's saying I watched an interview with him recently because he's writing books and stuff where he said he might not return. He might have that be his last movie.
I wouldn't
because of the state of things in Hollywood right now.
I guess it would be a worthy swan song in terms of themes and whatever, but I think he'll come back.
It'd be tricky if he does have one more movie in him, but it's not till like 2026 or 2027 and it's not as good as his others. He doesn't want that to happen. He doesn't want to have this long gap and then he makes one more movie and it's not great. So I know he won't come back unless he knows he's got something really special.
Right, which is why I think he's limited himself in terms of how many movies he's gonna actually make, but we'll see.
We'll see. And then best screenplay goes to The Godfather as well. Frenzy got into best screenplay at the Golden Globes. That's surprising to me.
It sure did.
And why are there 6 nominees here? Some of them have 6. We didn't talk about best actress in a drama. Let's mention that real quick.
Oh, yes.
Liv Ullmann wins for The Emigrants. That's a cool win.
That is a cool win. I think it's kind of a surprising win. I mean, I would assume it would be going to Diana Ross.
Diana Ross makes the most sense there.
Yeah.
But as we talked about, and that's on my top 5, that is a great movie and she's amazing in it. So that I feel like that's just like the quality of the movie and the performance got her through. And I
can't argue with that.
They made the right choice there, although Ross would have been a good pick too, along with Cicely Tyson.
Yeah, and then these other 3 nominees I have not.
Tuesday Played As It Lays was a tough movie, a tough chat in September. I love the work of Joan Didion. She wrote the novel and the screenplay, and Anthony Perkins is the male lead. I love Anthony Perkins, so I was like, we're doing this one. And it's not very good. It's very slow, and it doesn't really. It's just a very meandering drama. Didn't work very well. And Tuesday Weld is really flat in the movie. Like does not have much charisma in that role. I don't know if it was the part itself or what happened there, but that she got in for. I think it bombed big time. It like came and went. That she got in at the Golden Globes is kind of surprising to me.
Interesting.
I have not seen One Is a Lonely Number or The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigold.
Nor have
Whoa, what a title. I believe that's directed by her husband, Paul Newman. Because I want to say they talked about that movie in the Ethan Hawke documentary, The Last Movie Stars, that came out last summer.
Sure. And it's based on a famous play, so that's how I know
it. Was like
a
Pulitzer Prize winner or something. It won something big. So I guess we can't change the title because we want to like connect it to that, but that title needed to be changed because it sounds like
lots.
Sounds like a 1950s B movie.
Yeah, sci-fi
with giant ants, right?
Yeah, not really selling the tickets with that title.
Like I don't know how you put that on a marquee and get people to come in to watch a somber drama. So I don't know what happened there, but that's a cool win for Ullman. And then finally, best motion picture drama goes to The Godfather, and comedy or musical goes to Cabaret.
Of course.
Which there you go. That makes sense.
Right, one of those years where the eventual 2 frontrunners for the Oscar both win at the Golden Globes, so that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, so just for you, also along with young Winston a few nights ago, I looked at some clips from 1776, which I believe you said you like.
Yeah, I saw it like maybe 15 years ago, so it's been a while. And I like musical theater, so I'm
I
partial.
I was like, William Devane is our lead of this giant epic movie. William Devane. Not, I mean, I love him on Boy Meets World as a kid, but
Oh, William Daniels. Okay, yeah.
oh, did I say Devane?
Yeah.
William Daniels? Am I
William
confusing him with
Daniels.
someone else?
I don't know. I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know what I'm doing. William
Well, he
Daniels.
did it on Broadway, so I think that was
Oh, is
the
that
idea.
was it?
I think a lot of the
transferred
cast is
over.
from the Broadway production.
So, but the William Devane is an actor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. He's not this actor though.
What do I know him from?
I couldn't tell you.
They look kind of similar.
I don't
What
know
is
this
he
man.
in? You don't know William Devane?
Sure
Wasn't he
don't.
on Lois and Clark in the 90s? You're too young.
I don't know. You're asking about a man I'd never heard of.
But oh, he was on the X-Files.
Okay.
Yeah. But 1776, I really love the last shot. I watched the last scene, and it's all of them signing the Declaration of Independence, and the camera slowly tracks
Mm-hmm.
back, and you see like the entire cast of characters coming up and signing as the music swells, and William Daniels stands there
There you
very
go. That's his name.
stands there very proud, and it was a great last shot. But I struggle with the period movies, and there's a lot of period movies around this time.
I mean,
Yeah.
the title itself tells you it's a period film, so I
William
understand.
William Devane is in McCabe and Mrs. Miller,
Haven't
which we
seen
talked.
it.
You haven't seen McCabe and Mrs. Miller?
No, not yet. I know. I
Oh, it's
will.
really good.
I'm really bad with westerns.
You're bad with westerns? Why?
Yeah, I got a lot of blind spots.
Oh, and William Devane is in Family Plot. That's the movie I know him from, also from this time period.
It all comes together. Devane.
I'm just happy that it's not. I didn't just make up that last name. I was gonna. No, I've really
I did
lost
think
my
you
mind.
did do that, so I'm glad you found the person.
Anything else here? I can't believe Avanti is nominated for best comedy or musical. That's crazy.
They loved it. Yeah.
And then no big surprises on the drama side. Poseidon Adventure, Frenzy, Deliverance.
I do find it interesting that Sounder didn't get a lot of love.
Yeah, so Sounder gets in for best director, or I'm sorry, for best picture at the Oscars, but it does not show up here for best drama.
No.
So, because that was a pretty big hit at the end of 72. I wonder if it took just a couple more months to really catch on to get that best picture nomination at the Academy Award.
Maybe because, of the best picture nominees, eventual nominees, that is, 3 of them are nominated for just straight up best picture here. So that's Godfather, Cabaret, and Deliverance. And then The Emigrants wins best foreign film with its sequel, The New Land. So they all had recognition in some way. And then Sounder just has best actress and new star of the year nominations, and that's it.
So yeah, that's the Golden Globes. Anything else you wanted to mention about the Golden Globes that year?
I don't think so. I
don't
always
think
it's
there's any clips online of that. Like
Probably
maybe
not.
a couple. Like I have found that the Golden Globes in the 70s and early 80s it's hard to find clips. It's around 84 and on where you start to see a lot of it on YouTube. Because I made a video about Meryl Streep's Golden Globe win for, it's about her Oscar win for Kramer versus Kramer. And she told that story on Graham Norton about how she won at the Golden Globes and she was like lactating at the time and
oh my God,
and was like covering up her breasts as she walked. I was like, I have to find this clip. This has got to be somewhere. And it was on someone's Facebook page. Like literally at the point when I had given up, I'm just not going to find this clip. I found it on this Facebook page that had it, and it's not great quality, but she does not do this.
She's lying.
That was a lie. That was a lie.
Exaggerate.
But she is wearing the dress she talks about. That is a very like a white silk dress. The dress is correct.
Maybe it was a fear she had that translated into a phantom memory.
Yeah. 30, 40 years later, she's talking about it. But so that's the Golden Globes. Now we get to the Academy Awards. They were presented on Tuesday, March 27th, 1973. So even in 50 years ago, we have a late March ceremony. Some of them are late April. So this one's a little bit earlier. at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, honoring the best films of 72. So it sounds like there wasn't one host. It was presided over by Carol Burnett, Michael Caine, Charlton Heston, and Rock Hudson.
Interesting.
What a group.
Interesting mix of
host your
political
show.
alignments.
So Carol Burnett, she showed up to preside, even though she didn't get a nomination for Pete and Tilly. So that's
class.
Classy of her. She could have been like, screw you guys.
Mm-hmm.
The ceremony was most famous probably for Marlon Brando's boycott.
Yes.
And his sending of Sacheen Littlefeather to explain why he couldn't show up to collect his Best Actor award. It's also famous for being Charlie Chaplin's only competitive Oscar win for Best Original Dramatic Score for his 20-year-old movie Limelight, which was eligible because it never screened in Los Angeles until 1972.
Right. Did they change the rules because of Limelight? Because you can't do this now. You can't just decide.
You can't just pull a 1996 movie from the vault that never got a screening and win an Oscar. You can't do that.
No way. Yeah. I wonder if it's because of this, because it is so brazen. They clearly just wanted to give Charlie Chaplin an Oscar, which is fine, but I don't know.
I mean, we kind of have it. Odd. We kind of have it this year for Top Gun Maverick. That film was shot 17 years ago, and it finally came out. Didn't that film shoot? It started shooting in 2018,
pre-pandemic. Yeah,
and it was supposed to open in December of 2019, and they pushed it to summer of 2020.
I mean, Avatar also started shooting 7 years
ago. Was Avatar 2 shooting in 2017? I want to say.
I think it started shooting in 2017, back to back with Avatar 3.
Right. That's why Edie Falco, did you see that clip of her on The View where she said she thought it opened already and it failed?
I would love to be that allowed to be that clueless, Could
you imagine?
Successful. I love it.
Could you imagine if you had acted in a film and 3-4 years later, it just pops into your head and you're like, oh yeah, must not have done well. I didn't hear anything.
Right. I would love to be at liberty to forget things like that.
She's like, oh, it's not out yet. Okay. So no, that's a very extreme example, but 20 years is crazy. That's a long time. So, but yeah, I mean, he had won 2 honorary Oscars, one in 1929 and one in 1972. So wait, is the big applause, the standing ovation, is that the year before?
I think so, right?
That must have been the year before. So does he come back and accept his award for Limelight? I don't think he does. That would seem strange to me if he's in the audience waiting with bated breath.
Right. I mean, let me see if there's any pictures of him.
Is there any?
That would be odd.
Yeah, I mean, I can pull up real quick on. So Limelight wins Best Original Dramatic Score. Oscar. Limelight. So, it's Diane Cannon presenting.
Okay.
With Michael Caine. And I'm just scrolling through it, and yeah, Charlie Chaplin is not here.
I probably wouldn't show up either.
I think after the 86-minute long standing ovation he got the year before, however long that was. I think that was it.
How long was it? 12 minutes?
It's the longest in history, right?
That's wild. I get it, but...
And I believe it's on YouTube. Do they really clap that long?
I would be exhausted.
Maybe they cut down the video on YouTube.
It's like when you hear about those film festival applause breaks and you're like, 5 minutes of clapping is a long time.
He received the longest standing ovation in Oscars history, 12 minutes.
Well, okay, here's the thing. A standing ovation is different than applause. It could be they were just standing up listening to his speech, maybe. I don't know.
Isn't an ovation
probably
mean
were clapping?
All
time. It does.
Okay. Because I know that's on YouTube. But let's see, the clip on YouTube is 5 minutes. So maybe they cut off some of the.
They just said, you know what?
Maybe they hired some intern. Like, okay, we need to shorten it.
Yeah, too much clapping.
I mean, what is there in minute 11 that you have to keep clapping for? Is my question.
My hands would fall off. No, thank you. When I was at the Venice Film Festival 2 years ago, there was I saw one movie that had the actors and directors there, and I got to experience one of those,
Oh, you got
famous
to be
film
in a room
festival.
of a standing
I think
ovation?
it was only like 4 minutes, but it was really embarrassing. It was really stupid. The only reason I didn't leave is I wanted to see how long it would go on
Right.
for. But it's so self-indulgent, and the people who they were applauding for clearly didn't know what to do. It was just very self-congratulatory. Didn't like it.
Yeah, we're going to Sundance. Sundance will have happened when this drops, which is
Mhm.
weird to think. We will be back by the time this drops. But I wonder if there's going to be any of those 12-minute standing ovations. Probably not.
Probably not.
I don't think it's too cold. Like we're not going
Too
to.
cold. Right, exactly. You got to conserve that energy for warmth.
Yeah. But so yeah, we'll talk about of course when we get to best actor, we'll talk about what happened with Brando there. Let's see. Cabaret set a record for the most Oscars
Yes.
won without winning Best Picture, which is 8, right? It won 8 Oscars. It just swept, but it doesn't win picture. If The Godfather had not been there, I think Cabaret would have won picture and
absolutely. I mean, it's got to be one of the. I don't think it was probably a close race, but it is one of the most obvious second place winners of all time. Like, there's nothing else that probably even came close to it.
But what's weird is that a lot of people, like casual Oscar fans, like they look to Best Picture. And when I was younger, I was aware of Cabaret, but like I always looked at Godfather as the Best Picture winner of 72, and that was the big winner that year. But it only won 3. Cabaret won 8. Cabaret was much more popular during that awards season, especially at the Oscars. But because it doesn't win the big award, it's like we don't consider it. Many don't consider it like the big winner of the night, which it totally was.
Right. And the other thing is that The Godfather had a lot of weird places where it wasn't even nominated. Like, it wasn't nominated in Best Art Direction. It, for some reason, was not nominated in Best Cinematography, which I do not understand. It has some of the best.
It's not in cinematography
of all time.
But Butterflies Are Free gets in, right?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
A movie that's mostly in an apartment of people talking, that got in over the
mostly
Godfather.
Close-ups. Exactly.
That's, I think, one of the most bizarre Oscar nominations in history is Butterflies Are Free for Best Cinematography, especially considering it gets in over The Godfather.
It also got into Best Sound. I don't know what's going on. They were loving those butterflies.
Those butterflies, which I don't think that you see a butterfly in the movie.
No.
Very strange.
Metaphor.
This year was the first time 2 African-American women received nominations for Best Actress. That's a big feat, especially given that before this, it's just Dorothy Dandridge.
I believe so.
Or Carmen Jones in the 50s.
Yeah, one of my favorite facts about this is that the second time this happens, where 2 African-American actors are nominated for Best Actress, is just 2 years ago at the 2020 awards when it was Viola Davis for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and Andrew Day for United States versus Billie Holiday, which means that both times it's happened, one of the actresses was playing Billie Holiday. So bizarre.
So in another like 40 plus years, we'll finally get that Billie Holiday performance that actually wins.
Right. Third time's the charm.
In 2051.
Oh boy.
But so yeah, so that's obviously a great piece of trivia about the ceremony, which should happen more often. I mean, technically it could happen. The Oscar nominations will have dropped already, so we'll find out. But Viola Davis, and Daniel Deadwyler.
I'm predicting both of them right now.
You are? Okay.
In like less than a month.
Because I've had Margot Robbie on the list, but now that the movie's bombing, I'm like, I don't think she gets in.
Shaking my head. No. Sorry, Margot. I love you, girl.
We'll see. But... She's great in Babylon, though.
I have yet to see it.
Okay.
But by the time this comes out, I'm sure I will have seen it. I will have found 4 hours of my life to carve out.
All of these long movies released at the end of the year. Let's see. This was also the first year when all the Oscar winners were brought out on stage at the end of the ceremony. The show drew a television audience of 85 million.
Wow.
What does it get now? Like, what does the show get now? I don't even know.
Yikes.
It's not that much.
No.
Let me see. How many people watched the last one? How many people watched the Oscars 2022? 15 million. So 50 years ago, 85 million people watched it, and now it's at 15.
And there were less people in the world back then. So what the hell?
Yes, there was less to watch on your screen 50 years ago, so that had something to do with it. But
true.
it just, yeah, I don't know what the like after like the 100th year, like what is the future of the Oscars have in store?
It'll
I
be
don't know.
streaming.
It'll just be
Ratings won't even exist anymore.
it'll just be streaming. Would that be weird if one year they just stream it? They don't even air
Well,
it live on
I mean,
ABC?
the whole thing about like the ratings is like, I'm pretty sure that only counts people who are actually watching it on classic
Right.
cable television. So that means that I don't count as a Oscar watcher, even though I clearly am. So
Yeah.
they're just, you can probably double that number for a more accurate idea of who's actually watching.
But I feel like there's an immediacy though to the Oscars. It's not something you can just like put on Netflix on the Sunday night and then, oh, I'll get around to that. I'll watch that next month. It's like it's something you have to watch that
Yeah.
night.
Right. It's like the Super Bowl. You don't watch
It's
it
like
next week.
if it dropped on streaming and it would just kind of sit there for a few months. Like
Well,
who would
big
watch
dorks
it?
like you and I would go back and rewatch moments. So
Maybe. I don't go back and rewatch current ceremonies. Like I won't like record it and then watch it again a week
sure.
later. I'll go maybe on YouTube and watch like some of the
Yeah.
speeches, but
I go back and watch shocking wins, and I watch everybody's face. That's my favorite
and then you
thing
do
to
the zoom in, you do like
Uh-huh.
the
All right, this time we're gonna watch this person. Yeah.
you see like how fake the reaction is.
Mhm.
Minnie Driver's reaction to Kim Basinger winning Best Supporting Actress for LA
Right,
Confidential.
or
But you see
Lauren
what she goes.
losing.
Have
It's
you
great.
seen that?
I love it.
After Kim Basinger had won everything else the whole season, and Minnie Driver is looking like this is the shocker of the night.
Well, I wouldn't have voted for her, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. But let's see. A few other things. So it was announced on February 12th, 1973, that The Godfather received 11 nominations, more than any other film. This was reduced to 10, tying with Cabaret, after a new vote by the Academy's music branch following a controversy over whether, is it Nino Rota? Is that how you say it? Nino Rota?
Yes, I believe so.
Score for The Godfather was eligible for the nomination it received. For the reballoting, members of the music branch chose from 6 films, The Godfather and the 5 films that had been on the short list for Best Original Dramatic Score but did not get nominated. John Addison's score for Sleuth won this new vote and thus replaced Rota's score on the official list of nominees. Controversy arose, according to Academy President Daniel Taradash, because the love theme in The Godfather had previously been used by Rota in an Italian movie called Fortunella.
Yes, and I've heard
So
both versions, and it's the same. It's the same music.
Same?
There is a different tempo and different instrumentation, but it's the same theme.
Okay, so if he hadn't have already used that one theme in another movie, we would have been fine. It would have gotten the 11.
But my question is, back then they had 2 score categories, one for adaptation score. So I don't know why they maybe couldn't just slide The Godfather over into that category, because there are only 3 nominees. So
I mean, I understand.
I can't speak to the
rule.
bylaws of the Oscars back then and stuff, but there was a place for it.
I understand that rule, but I don't know, an Italian movie, one of its theme, it's not the whole score, it's one theme, but it's a very important theme in the movie. So, but I don't think, I mean, most people wouldn't really pay attention to that. Like, no one would be like, oh, that was already in a movie.
And composers self-plagiarize all the time. It's just that one of the few times he got caught because it was up for an Oscar.
I'll often listen to a score in a movie and I'll be like, this reminds me of this other score, but there's just a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, for Thomas Newman's been writing the same score for 30 years now.
Yeah, when you listen to Thomas Newman's score of American Beauty followed by Road to Perdition, both by Sam Mendes, they're very similar scores. Like you can tell. Yes. Oh, and I want to say even worse is his score for Pay It Forward from 2000 is very similar to American Beauty, both starring Kevin Spacey. Like they're very similar score.
In certain instruments he likes to use and certain note patterns over and over again. And
so you're not sad that he still has not won yet, right? He still hasn't won?
Nope, I don't. I probably would have given him the award twice already by now for like maybe American Beauty or Skyfall, but I just overall think he's one of the most egregious in terms of
think what you will about American Beauty. That's a great score, like a very memorable score to American Beauty. What won that year? The Red Violin.
Exactly.
Like kind of a weird
We're always humming
Oscar
the
factoid.
tunes to the Red Violin.
Red Violin.
Come on.
But And then there was talk of him winning for 1917, right? But that went to Joker.
Right, which is something I'll never say otherwise, but thank God Joker won.
Yeah, I didn't remember much of his score to 1917. Kind of similar
It's
this
just
year to
droning.
John Williams' The Fablemans.
Oh, I kind of like that score.
Real like I have to listen back to it. In the
Yeah,
movie, it never stood out to me. There was never one moment where I'm like, I love this dramatic score. It never really had an impression.
when you listen to it separately, I think it is
It's good.
quite
Okay.
lovely. Yeah,
Okay. I'll have to do that.
I'd be okay if you won.
Because might be his last time he writes a score for Spielberg. This would be
I think they said it is his final time working with
so
him.
I think that might carry him through to a win.
I
Because
agree.
he's been nominated 50 plus times. He hasn't won since Schindler's List almost 30
Yeah,
years ago.
he only has 5 Oscars. I mean, only I have 0, so I would love 5 Oscars. But 5 Oscars for John Williams feels small, feels low.
Right. Feel like he should have won 7 or 8 at least. I mean, he's done some amazing work.
Less nominations, but more wins is how it should be.
All right, a couple other factoids here before we get to the nominations. The nominations in the category of Best Original Song were not announced in February with the rest of the nominations, reportedly because of a mix-up in balloting. It was later reported that the Academy had been considering whether Curtis Mayfield's song Freddie's Dead from Superfly should be eligible. The song was ruled ineligible because its lyrics were not sung in the film. The song was released as a single with lyrics, but the version in the movie was instrumental. Academy Governor John Green was quoted as saying, "Times have changed. In the old days, Hollywood made 30 or 40 musicals a year. There were plenty of songs to choose from. Now there are hardly any, and most of the eligible songs are themes. Both the lyric and the music must be heard on the soundtrack to be eligible." I kind of understand that ruling.
Yeah, he's
If
kind of
it's not
right.
sung in the movie.
He's right in terms of I agree. If the song is not performed in the movie, then why would it be nominated? And also, you're rewarding things that are in the film. You're not rewarding things that are outside of it.
Right.
But also, like, he's right. There's way less songs for movies than ever, and that's continued to this day. Some of these nominations for best song are very
What's the current
odd.
front runner for best song? Is it the Top Gun Maverick song by Lady Gaga?
Top Gun Maverick or the one from Black Panther.
Oh, right.
Probably the top 2.
That's a good song. I like that song for Black Panther. That one might win.
I think it's
You don't like it? It's okay.
It's a little boring. Sorry. I'm a big Lady Gaga fan, so I'm a little biased, but I much prefer that song.
Yeah, no, that'd be a good one too. The last thing I have here, Charlton Heston was late for his role presenting the voting rules. Apparently, is a segment at the beginning of the show.
That's my favorite part. Tell me about the rules. I love rules.
He was late due to a flat tire on his car. So Clint Eastwood, who was there to present Best Picture, was asked to fill in. Heston's written dialogue leaned heavily on his role in the 10 Commandments, leading Eastwood to quip, "Come on, flip the card, man. This isn't my bag." Eastwood also famously said on filling in at the last minute, "They picked the guy who hasn't said but 3 lines in 12 movies to substitute for him, Heston." Heston arrived part of the way through the bit, allowing Eastwood to escape.
That's kind of funny.
So Eastwood's there reading lines that are meant for Heston.
Yeah, I think it's pretty humiliating for ultra alpha male Charlton Heston not to be able to change a flat tire quickly, but I've driven a car in years, so I can't
sitting
talk.
there like, yeah, do not trust Brian Rowe in helping you with your flat tire. That's not my expertise.
Good to know if my car explodes and
I could entertain you. I could entertain you with film chat while we're waiting. But all right, so that takes us to the categories. Some of these technical categories we don't have to spend too long on, but I just want to mention. So best foreign language film goes to the Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, a great win. Have you seen that movie?
I have not, unfortunately.
It's really good. It's one of my favorite best foreign language Oscar winners for sure. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get around to it because one of the last musicals that Stephen Sondheim was ever writing was an adaptation of that movie.
Right.
So,
which I mentioned on an episode. Was that with you? I remember I talked about that on an episode recently. And how that would have been a really cool musical.
Yeah.
Because it's like a very kind of strange movie story. That would have made a nice stage adaptation, I think.
Yeah, they'll do something with it one day, I'm sure.
I did not see any of these other nominees here. The only one that we'll get to in a few months, I hope you come back for this one, Cody, is the New Land in the fall.
Yes, I have seen the New Land.
In the fall of 2023, we're going to do that episode because I think that dropped in October in the United States in 73.
Possibly.
And you know how much I love The Emigrants, so I'm ready. I'm like getting myself prepared.
Yeah,
for
it's
the
one of the
4
few...
hour.
I know, and it's a sequel, which is always fun to talk about in terms of Oscars.
Yeah. Best documentary feature. I have not seen these. I glanced at Marjo. It looked very boring, so I didn't watch it. I would watch maybe the Manson documentary, but I can't imagine it's that interesting, informative for like a 72 documentary. I feel like Manson documentaries would get more interesting as we get closer to today and there's more information.
And more we know about him.
But so Marjo wins there. Best animated short subject goes to A Christmas Carol, which I read had some controversy because it initially aired on television in the fall of 71. And then they gave it like a small theatrical release in 72, and then it got nominated, and then it won Best Animated Short Subject. Have you seen that version? It's very creepy.
I have. A few years ago when I was laid off and had a lot of time in my hands, I read A Christmas Carol and then watched like every version of it I could find.
Everything.
And this is one of the better ones.
It's 25 minutes. It's a good length. And the animation style with the ghosts is very creepy. It's really cool. Like it's not any kind of animation I've seen. And so that's kind of a neat win there. And then Best Original Dramatic Score goes to Limelight.
Sure.
Our favorite film from 72. I'm sorry to the listeners that I did not do an episode this last year about Limelight, but
yeah, I haven't seen it either. Sorry, Charlie.
I haven't seen that one. I've seen most of his stuff. I've been meaning to watch Limelight. I want to say I watched a short documentary about it on the Criterion channel recently. Like someone was talking about it, kind of like his last masterpiece, a really great film from the early 50s. So I want to get to that.
I mean, this is anecdotal, but I feel like it only really gets talked about in terms of this really weird Oscar win.
Right.
For the most part.
Because I saw that when I was first looking at the year in film, and I'm like, wait, I thought his last movie came out in the 60s. What's the 72 movie he made? I'm like, oh, it's from 20 years before. That's very strange.
So weird.
So, and then two of the three winners here are posthumous. Raymond Roche and Larry Russell. So, because they had made the movie 20 years before. They're like, thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing. A little bit too late on that one, but yeah, it beats out Images, Napoleon, Samantha, Poseidon Adventure, Sleuth. John Williams, speaking of John Williams, that's a great nomination for the Poseidon Adventure. It's a great score.
Yes.
So I could have seen that. I could have seen that winning. And then the other scoring category is adaptation and original song score. That goes to Cabaret over Lady Sings the Blues and Man of La Mancha. So yeah, you're right. It's adapted. So couldn't have The Godfather gotten in here?
I guess the difference is that it's not like Nino Rota put that theme into The Godfather as a tribute or as a readaptation. It kind of was like, let me just grab this old theme, which again happens all the time. He just got caught.
No one's gonna notice.
Right. The Academy said we do.
Like, could create something new here, but no one's gonna see this movie. I could just
exactly.
And then he's like, can you imagine like you get nominated for an Oscar and then they take it away? Doesn't happen very often, right?
No.
Would you be mad?
I'd be mad. I'd be furious. But The Godfather 2 wins Best Score, and is that also him? I believe so.
Oh, maybe he wins 2 years later.
Yes, it was him. So he gets his Oscar eventually.
It's like Coppola finally winning Best Director for 2.
Right.
And doesn't he say, I almost won this award 2 years ago for the first half of the same picture. Which I always think is a funny thing to say. No ego at all. Mr. Coppola. Let's see. Anything else on this page? And then Best Original Song goes to The Morning After from the Poseidon Adventure, which is briefly sung in the movie at the very beginning. Has nothing really to do with it.
And it's in the world of the film. Like
it's in the world of the film. There's like,
I kind of love.
They're singing. There's a woman singing, a band.
Yeah.
And it's just at the very beginning. Just like it's fine, but it's a very good song. So I can see why if you listen to all of these songs, that one's definitely up there. Ben did get
Definitely.
nominated. I love that
Right.
Ben is an Oscar nominated film.
I mean, pretty telling that Ben and The Morning After are the only ones with clickable Wikipedia pages here. So that tells you about their legacy.
Yes, I have never heard of the Little Ark or The Stepmother. I don't know those movies. And then
Mm-hmm.
we talked about The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, and I think we might have mentioned that it got an Oscar nomination for a song, but I don't remember the song being memorable.
I don't know anything about the movie, so
So I think they were like, "Are we really going to give this to Ben? We can't give this to Ben. Let's give it to Poseidon Adventure." Probably
True.
what the thinking came down to. Best costume design. Let's get into some of these other technical categories. That goes to Travels with My Aunt, which is a really cool win. Maggie Smith for 2 hours plus, just wearing all of these dazzling costumes, and we get flashback scenes, and it's very period at times, and so that's a cool win. Although I don't know how you don't give it to The Godfather.
Well, there's that, and also I feel like if Cabaret had been nominated here, it probably would have won because it was winning everything else.
Why is Cabaret not here? That's a good question.
I don't know. I mean, they're not super flashy costumes. The characters are pointedly kind of lower class and grimy, so that might be part of it. But like, that's still impressive design. They still had to, make those costumes. And there's certain costumes, like the MC's costume is pretty iconic. So I don't really know how it missed here.
I mean, it's a period film, so
Yeah.
you could put it there. I mean, I can't imagine
Like the Poseidon Adventure is not
Poseidon
a period
Adventure
film, and
is
that's
not
here.
period, and the costumes are fine. I wouldn't put that as one of my nominations for the Poseidon Adventure.
What I wonder is if maybe the costumes are nominated for the Poseidon Adventure because they have to wear the same costumes the whole movie and they get progressively like dirtier and wetter, which is like they probably had to make a bunch of different costumes of the same design, which is impressive.
That'd be hard to do on a movie. It's just like if you're shooting it out of sequence, like how wet is the blouse?
Nasty. I've
But
heard shooting with water is just the worst thing in the world, so I do not envy anybody involved making that movie.
Like, yeah, any movie that like Hard Rain.
Sure. No, thank you.
Must have been a very difficult movie to make in the late 90s. But Travels with My Aunt, this makes it an Oscar-winning film, so that's cool. Anthony Powell for his costumes. Best sound goes to Cabaret. That makes sense.
Sure.
I mean, I guess the other one that could have won is Poseidon Adventure. I mean, there's a lot going on with sound throughout the whole movie.
Yeah,
but
or The Godfather, all those
Godfather.
guns.
A lot of guns. But why is The Candidate and Butterflies Are Free nominated?
Do not understand. We talked about this
the
in the
Candidate.
Candid episode, but I recently watched Butterflies Are Free for this episode, and I have no idea how or this got nominated. I don't know what is so special about it. It's mostly just dialogue, and there's some scenes of characters like playing a tape recorder, but that's it. There's nothing in the movie that is standoutish about the sound.
Like, why is Deliverance not nominated for Best Sound?
I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. It's so weird.
I feel like that's an obvious nomination.
Lady Sings the Blues. There's a lot of music in that.
Huh. Butterflies Are Free. They just had it out for that. They loved that movie.
They loved him.
Not enough to get Goldie in, but they like that movie.
Yeah.
Best art direction again goes to Cabaret over, let's see, kind of similar titles. Young Winston keeps showing up here.
Sure does.
I'm like, did this movie do very well at the box office? Did a lot of people like this movie? It looked very stagey and kind of slow from what I looked at it. I was
Again,
like, I think it got 3
here?
nominations. So I was like, I should look at a few clips. And it's like, there's just so many films around this time that look like Young Winston. just not that of interest to me. But sometimes a movie that's not loved by a lot of people still gets into at the Oscars for a few nominations if there's just some really great technical feats on display.
But where's The Godfather? Like, where is it in
this
category?
Art direction. Do we nominate The Godfather? Of course not. That doesn't seem worthy, right? We have to instead nominate Young Winston. Of course, The Godfather should be there for art direction. That's very strange. I mean, maybe they were like, we're just giving it too much. Like, we're nominating it for 3 men for supporting actor. We can't give it too much. We don't want to look crazy.
Sure, but Cabaret, same thing. Like Cabaret and Godfather ended up with the same number of nominations once that score nominee was disqualified.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, All About Eve gets 14 nominations.
14.
So and The Godfather came in at 11/10. Like there
Right.
was room to
Yeah.
give it like art direction, cinematography. It wouldn't have been crazy. It wouldn't be like 17 nominations for The Godfather,
Right.
which I'm always like, boy, did Titanic come close to beating that record, right?
So
All
I don't.
the
If
all
they
that
had
they needed
managed to
to
give it a
do
screenplay
was give it
nomination,
screenplay,
uh-huh.
and it would have gotten 15 nominations. And it would have held the record there for a long time, maybe forever. I don't know.
Probably forever. I mean,
DiCaprio could have
DiCaprio,
gotten in. So there were two.
Billy
There were two
Zane.
big categories. Billy Zane. Billy Zane, I don't think was ever seriously considered for best supporting actor, but I really
Oh,
like him in that movie. He's really great.
me too.
Best cinematography goes to Cabaret over 1776, Butterflies Are Free, The Poseidon Adventure, and Travels with My Aunt. Why is Butterflies Are Free in cinematography
I
over
don't get it.
The Godfather? That
It's
is
well
bizarre.
shot. It's not incredibly shot like The Godfather is.
Yeah.
Some of those images in The Godfather are still talked about to this day. Like the shot of them at the Statue of Liberty in the background when they're shooting
Mhm.
that guy in the car. That's one of my favorite shots of all time.
So good.
It says so much about what's going on in the story thematically. And I
The
guess
shooting in
not
that restaurant, I mean, it's some of it's
right.
the editing too and the sound, but the way that scene is shot is really memorable and so many great parts. Like
Yeah.
Marlon Brando's death scene is shot really interestingly, almost looking like a handheld camera.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many great ideas put into the look of that film.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
one of those
strange.
really weird misses. I really don't get it.
Like the other four nominees I can see, but Butterflies doesn't make sense. And 1776 with our friend William Daniels.
Yes.
I love
I've
that
heard of
last
him.
shot. So I think that that might have been part of it too. But it's just these like big epic period films. If they're shot okay, they can often get into best cinematography.
Sure.
And there it is. I'm surprised young Winston didn't get in.
Right.
And then film editing goes to Cabaret over Deliverance, The Godfather, and Poseidon Adventure, and everyone's favorite film from 72, The Hot Rock.
Yeah, I just don't know anything about that one.
Hot
So
Rock, I looked at very early in the year because it came out in January of 72, and it stars Robert Redford. So another
okay.
Redford movie. He opens the year with The Hot Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Summer, he has The Candidate. December, he has Jeremiah Johnson. So that's a big year for him.
Big hot
And
star.
and Jeremiah Johnson, I believe, does not get an Oscar nomination of any kind.
No,
But
it
The
does
Hot
not.
Rock gets it.
Have you seen this one?
It's like I watched some of it. It's like a caper. It's like a Ocean's 11 kind of a thing, circa
Okay.
January of 72, and it just doesn't have as much energy. And it's okay. But yeah, there's like a couple action scenes, and I guess they liked the editing there. But I'm trying to think, what would I replace The Hot Rock with editing wise? Deliverance is there.
Right. This is a pretty solid category in terms of what, the big movies of the year that are like Cabaret and The Godfather both make it
The
in.
Cabaret.
The Cabaret and Godfather both make it in.
Yeah, Poseidon Adventure makes sense. That would be
Yep.
in there.
Deliverance makes sense.
Not to say that editing has to only be like action film.
No, but in terms of what the Oscars usually go for, this makes a lot of sense.
Lady Sings the Blues has some good editing. That could have gotten
I
in
guess
there.
so, yeah.
And maybe I'm trying to think of any other kind of genre films like The Getaway. Well edited, The Getaway. But yeah, that's a very odd. I want to know the person who was like the Hot Rock needs to be here. And everyone went, okay.
Such a hot rock.
Okay, so moving on here, we get to, is there any other of the smaller categories we didn't get to? I just have, let's see. We did editing. Yeah, so we're on to the top 8, right?
All right. Mm-hmm.
Best
The big ones.
screenplay based on factual material or material not previously produced or published. I'm glad that has now been called best adapted screenplay.
Right.
You
Well,
imagine
this is
that's
best
what it was
original
supposed-
screenplay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's so long. It's so long. I get confused.
You got lost.
Based on factual material not previously produced. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Best original screenplay. We have The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. It's a great nomination. I love that. Lady Sings the Blues. Murmur of the Heart. Young Winston. And the winner is The Candidate, which we talked about last May. So what is your
I've only
take
seen
on
two
this
of
category?
these. I've only seen two of these, of The Candidate and Lady Sings the Blues. Of those two, I'd probably go with The Candidates. And we talked about this on our episode. It's not like there's a ton of huge movies that could have been nominated here, as far as we can tell. Like big
Right.
exceptions.
Deliverance is based on a book.
Yep.
Trying to think
And
of
then the other
Emigrants is in
four Best
adapted.
Picture nominees are all in adapted.
Okay. So yeah, I think they didn't have a lot of choices here. And that's why we get Murmur of the Heart, which I did watch at the very beginning of the year because that was a 1971 release that I think didn't come out to the US until 72. And that was a nice kind of coming of age story. I like that. But yeah, I think the only other movie I would maybe give it to is Discreet Charm of Bourgeoisie, but even that, it's like it's not the screenplay that I love. It's like the presentation of it and how
the
characters interact with each other. And it's kind of more of a director's movie. So I guess The Candidate, but I don't. Again, that's another one. I don't really think of the screenplay as being why that movie succeeds. It's more of the performances and.
If I remember correctly, the dialogue is pretty snappy. It's kind of very knowing about the political process, which is maybe a little bit, that's very Reagan. It's very Nixon era. So there's, I can see why it won, especially of this lineup.
What's Up, Doc? That's an original script, right?
Oh, probably.
And that's the number 3 biggest movie of the year. That could have been a cool category to include What's Up, Doc. I don't think that's based on a book or anything. Pretty sure that was a original script. So that could have been it.
Looks original to me.
That could have been here. Wonder why What's Up, Doc, because of its romantic comedy leanings, maybe they don't consider that. But Butterflies Are Free is kind of like a romantic comedy, a little bit more serious, but that they included in a bunch of categories. So I feel like What's Up, Doc could have gotten in somewhere. Kind of had like a Bridesmaid style best original screenplay nominee.
Back in the day, they like to give it to kind of romantic comedies like that. I'm thinking of like Pillow Talk, one original screenplay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wonder what happened there. I mean, it's not because it came out in February, March, because that's when The Godfather and Cabaret came out. So it's not like they forgot about it. So, I wonder why What's Up, Doc was pushed aside. Did it get any Golden Globe nominations? I don't think it did. Did we talk about it? I don't think it did.
I don't think so, which is weird.
That's very good. It's very good. It's very funny and fresh, and it was a huge box office hit. Why does it just get completely pushed aside from award season?
Legacy.
That's very strange. Maybe they were all seeing her other movie, Up the Sandbox, and they're like, we're not giving her a thing.
Everybody was stuck in the sandbox.
Yeah. Okay, and then best screenplay based on material from another medium, best adapted screenplay. Goes to The Godfather. That's a great win. And the other nominees are Cabaret, The Emigrants, Pete and Tilly, and Sounder. The one I would remove here is Pete and Tilly. That doesn't need to be here.
Sure. The only non-Best Picture nominee.
Yeah, but the other ones are great. Sounder makes sense. The Emigrants, wonderful screenplay. I love that script. And then Cabaret. I just think The Godfather probably won over Cabaret because of all of the songs in Cabaret. Maybe that.
Right. I mean, musicals don't ever do well in screenplay. I think one of the only big ones to win is Gigi. And Cabaret is different, though, because it has so relatively few songs, and the songs are not, part of the story progression. The screenplay is really mostly everything else going on outside the club. But still, I mean, The Godfather is just such a elevation of the source material, and it just makes sense for a screenplay win.
Yeah. Did you see my tweet recently about Gigi and how it was? I said, can you guess the Best Picture Oscar winner I started watching last night and couldn't finish?
Oh my god!
And it was Gigi.
The thing about the 50s is that it's not even the worst Best Picture winner. It's a rough decade.
Yeah, I did a year of Vincent Minnelli for 2022. I had only seen like 3 of his films, and I wanted to see. And I saw some ones I really liked. I liked The Clock with Julie Garland, and I had never seen an American in Paris. I really enjoyed American in Paris.
Yeah,
but Gigi, boy, did that bring me! I'm like, this is the movie that won him Best Director, and it's very slow.
Oscars. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It opens with that creepy. That opens with that creepy song about little girls and how we love them. And it's like, what? Happening.
No, thank you.
And I gave it about an hour, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Oh, you didn't even finish? Oh no.
No, I only watched the first half. I just couldn't do it.
You gotta finish it.
Well, I could have, but I didn't. I know. I'm like, well, I guess now, Brian, you'll just never will have seen every Best Picture winner in its entirety because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But maybe one day I'll go back.
Again, there's worse ones in the same decade. So
Yeah, Greatest Show on Earth and
Great Show
Around
on
the World in
Earth,
80
Around the
Days.
World. Yeah, rough.
I don't know if I've watched either of those either.
They're
I was
really
like,
bad.
oh, The Fablemans is making me kind of intrigued by Greatest Show on Earth, but I've also heard it's
They
bad.
show the best thing about that movie.
That's the best
So
scene.
you already, yeah, no, it's the worst Best Picture winner of all time, I think. And I've seen every single one. So
Spielberg did not want to show the main character falling asleep in all the rest of the movie.
right, seriously.
It just cuts to him just asleep on Michelle Williams' lap, like, come on, honey, it's the good action part.
Seriously.
Okay, so that takes us to the acting categories. Best Supporting Actor goes to Joel Grey for Cabaret. The other nominees are Eddie Albert for The Heartbreak Kid, James Caan for The Godfather, Robert Duvall for The Godfather, Al Pacino for The Godfather. What do we think of this category?
The thing about this category is, there's always talk about maybe Pacino should have won. This should have been his Oscar.
Yeah.
He definitely is in the wrong category. I don't really care about categories. But the thing is, Joel Grey is so good in Cabaret.
It's such a cool win.
It's such a cool win. He has like no spoken dialogue. He's just singing the whole time, but it's such a distinct character. He doesn't even have a real name. His name is the MC.
The MC.
It's just such an amazing performance. It's so like specific. It's basically creating an entire archetype of character, which is this like, trickster goblin almost. It's
almost kind of a narrator kind of a character. It's not
kind of.
We talked about it with Izzy from Be Kind Rewind. We talked about Cabaret about a year ago. And I asked her, I was like, is it worthy to win an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor if we don't really get a whole lot of backstory about the character? It's not that kind of a performance. And we both agreed, like, in this case,
doesn't matter. He's barely even human. Again, he doesn't have a real name. He kind of he's kind of more thematic than character. He doesn't really move the plot forward himself. He kind of is there to just represent the kind of creeping dread and chaos of the Weimar era. And I think it's an amazing performance. I'm so happy he won.
Yeah, that's a cool win. And he also won the Golden Globe, right?
He won the Golden Globe. And it's one of those, I think there's like 7 or 8 performances that have won both the Tony and the Oscar. And I just like that category.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Eddie Albert is very funny in The Heartbreak Kid as Sybil Shepherd's mom. He gets like 2 scenes that are just awesome. Where
do you mean dad?
Or I play that would have been that could have won. That could have won the Oscar, Cody. But no, as Sybil Shepherd's dad in The Heartbreak Kid, and both of his really great scenes, Elaine May, the director, really allows him to just play off of Charles Grodin. The first one, like, it doesn't cut for like 3 minutes. Like, it's just Charles Grodin talking to him and pleading, like, I know I'm married right now. I'm on my honeymoon, but I really think I should marry your daughter. And him just kind of like nodding his head, and you don't know what he's going to say.
It's a good,
he just explodes.
Classic, supporting performance.
And then that last scene where he's like, just how much money do I need to give you to get out of my daughter's life? Some great stuff. So I it's not the most obvious nomination, but I love that he got in for a comedy. That's really cool. Playing the dad. And then let's see. So I love these performances from The Godfather. I love James Caan in The Godfather. That's a great role and a great nomination, but it's hard when he's up against Al Pacino. It's like, how do you pick him over Pacino?
Right. My thing is, I actually think of these 3 men, I think I like the Duvall performance the best. I think it is really
that's good too.
Like secretly kind of difficult because you have to kind of
allow
yourself to you have to be quieter. You have to allow yourself not to take the spotlight. There's no scene where he explodes, but he's there the whole movie. He's kind of lurking in the background. He's really important to the family, even though he's not technically part of the family. I think it's really great work.
Yeah. But it's like, how do you possibly consider Al Pacino a supporting actor?
It's ridiculous. It is agreed, especially because he probably has a bigger part than Brando, who wins Best Actor.
Yeah, I'm sure that's online, like the running time.
Yeah,
he has
not
to
even
be
just
in it more.
Runtime. He's more thematically the protagonist. He starts the movie in one place and ends it in another, which Vito Corleone, I guess he starts the movie alive and ends it dead. So there's that.
Yeah.
Other than that, he doesn't really go on a journey at all.
Yeah, Al Pacino's progression, his arc is more dynamic overall as a 3-hour movie than Marlon Brando. But Brando
Right. I
was
mean,
the big name.
Pacino's character is kind of the grand tragedy of the movie. You know, he starts the movie as this ideal, like American person. He starts the movie in an army uniform, and he ends it with his, the ring getting kissed as he gets passed on to the head of the mafia family. It's really just about like the downfall of this man,
Mm-hmm.
even if it
And
looks like he's going up.
I wonder what would have happened if Brando had been nominated in supporting actor and Pacino had been nominated in lead. Like, what would have happened?
I think Brando wins either category.
Over Joel Grey.
Yep. And then in lead, I don't know what happens.
I think it goes to Pacino.
Maybe
over
he
these
was
other
so
four.
new and young, though. They didn't like doing that.
Maybe Laurence Olivier takes it, who I thought
or maybe this is Peter O'Toole's Oscar. Who knows?
But that's the only nomination for the ruling class, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I love, James Caan passed away a few months ago, and I didn't realize at the time that this was his only Oscar nomination was The Godfather. I couldn't believe that. I'm like, oh, that was it. It was just the one. So
right,
I'm happy he got in here.
Yeah, and
they could have just nominated Pacino and called it a day and had other, actors pulled in other actors there. So I don't know who is anyone left off the list there. Ned Beatty for Deliverance, maybe. You don't like?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
But
I mean, like, there's probably even like 2 or 3 other guys you can pull from The Godfather, but they picked the 3 biggest ones, obviously.
This could have been the one time we just had 5 nominees from the same movie.
Mm-hmm.
We could have just, and then you just pick your favorite actor from that one movie.
Exactly, it's guaranteed one Oscar win. I kind of love that.
Yeah, who was in the Golden Globes for supporting actor that we?
I have it right here.
James Coco, Alex. Yeah, none of these guys. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that list makes sense, but
the Oscars lineup is way better than
it's so much better. Sure. It often is, right? Isn't the Oscar lineup better? I mean, sometimes
because the Golden Globes they do some.
Sometimes you get like Judi Dench for Belfast,
right? Or Jared Leto for that. What was that movie called? The Little Lies.
Well, he didn't get in at the Oscars,
right? But he got in at the Golden Globes, and that was
every year weird. we get like the Jared Leto and the Little Things, and I'm like, he's not going to make it all the way to the Oscars, right? And then he doesn't.
Yeah, he almost did.
He almost did.
Right. This year almost we have Eddie Redmayne in The Good Nurse, or whatever that's called.
Eddie Redmayne for The Good Nurse. He's got that one explosive scene at the end, but I don't think the movie is really making its mark. So I forgot I watched that until you just mentioned that.
I watched it like on Christmas Eve this year.
It's average. Yeah. It's okay.
It was fine.
Let's see. So best supporting actress. This is a unique category this year. There clearly wasn't a front runner. It was just kind of like, we're just going to throw darts at the wall and see what happens. So we get Jeannie Berlin nominated for The Heartbreak Kid. She's very funny in that movie. I like that nomination. Geraldine Page for Pete and Tilly for one scene at the end. Susan Terrell for Fat City. That's an interesting nomination. Do you know anything about Fat City?
I do. I haven't seen it, but I've heard pretty good things about both.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's not on my list at the end here, but some of it was good. I didn't like how the movie, it's kind of about 2 boxers. One is Stacy Keach and the other one is Jeff Bridges. And the way the movie goes back and forth between the 2 stories never quite rings true for me. I wanted them to be in the movie together more. And Susan Terrell is Stacy Keach's boyfriend, or is Stacy Keach's girlfriend. Boy, I'm having gender problems today. Susan Terrell has one great scene towards the end and has some moments of humor and some moments of big drama. And I can see why she got in there. But the nominee that should be here, I think, is Ellen Burstyn from The King of Marvin Gardens, which is a movie that isn't fully successful, but she is on another level of great in that movie. And she's got a couple really big explosive scenes, and her character is kind of bipolar, and she's really sweet one minute, and then she's screaming at Bruce Stern, her boyfriend, the next minute. And she's got some great moments in that movie. And the fact that she's nominated for 3 movies around this time, she gets in for The Last Picture Show the year before, she gets in for The Exorcist the year after, and then she wins for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore the year after that. It's strange to me that she doesn't get in for King of Marvin Gardens, which came out in September, October. That that Susan Terrell gets in over Ellen Burstyn is strange to me.
Was King of Marvin Gardens did it do well? I've never even.
I don't think it did very well, but I don't think it did worse than Fat City. That was a very small summer release, so I wonder what happened there. Maybe the voters just did not take to that movie overall, and they like Fat City more. But overall, it's a good list. And then our winner here is Eileen Heckert for Butterflies Are Free, which was a really solid performance. What did you think of her in that movie?
I thought she was pretty great. I mean, it's a very classic supporting actress performance. She comes in 45 minutes into the movie. She has a distinct voice. Her character is there to disrupt what's happening. She disrupts this kind of hippie lifestyle that her son has found himself in, and she's really the voice of reason. I'm sure a lot of voters could relate to her as somebody who was older, watching the younger generation do things they didn't understand.
Right.
What's weird is I don't think Eileen Heckert got any other nominations for this performance before she won the Oscar.
She won the Tony, right?
No, she didn't.
Or she was nominated for the
Tony. But oh shoot, who played the role? Whoever played the Goldie Hawn role on Broadway
wins over her.
The Tony. Right.
It was a name, I want to say. It was like someone we would know.
Like Blythe Danner?
Yeah, it was like a Blythe Danner, maybe. You're right.
Yeah.
So
it was Blythe Danner. I was right.
Blythe Danner. Yeah. And then so she's nominated here. I mean, there's not I would say maybe Shelley Winters would have been in second place because she won the Golden Globe and that was a big hit movie. But Shelley Winters had already won twice.
Right. I think though she was so beloved and they clearly liked that movie so much that I think she was second place.
Okay. Because I think if Shelley Winters didn't already have two, I think she would have been an easy win here. Because she's got some great moments in that movie. She's very memorable. Her big scene at the end where she's saving swimming and saving this person's life.
It's camp. It's great.
And then her next scene is so over the top movie glorious, kind of okay, this is definitely an Oscar-y kind of performance here. So that would make sense. I don't think the other three had a shot. I mean,
no, and I love Jeannie Berlin. I love her in that movie. She got a Golden Globe nomination, so maybe, but I think she also
Geraldine Page, of course, is very well known for having a lot of Oscar nominations without ever winning until the very end of her career. She finally wins for The Trip to Bountiful in '86. Right. And I'm, it's not my favorite win of the decade, but I'm happy that she wins for that and not like this. This would have been kind of a pathetic
win
in her longer
win. Not a great win, but I'm glad she has an Oscar, I guess.
Yeah. She's really good in Interiors from '78.
Yes, she is. I would probably give her the Oscar for that.
That's probably the one I'd give it to her for. But Trip to Bountiful, she's good in that.
It's fine.
So Butterflies Are Free. It was very beloved throughout the year and at the box office, and then it does well on award season, and then it's an Oscar-winning movie. Okay.
I guess so.
Finally kissing to goodbye to Butterflies Are Free. I feel like we've been talking about that since last summer in a lot of episodes. So this is it. Bye Butterflies Are Free. Okay, the top leading categories. Best Actor goes to Marlon Brando for The Godfather over Michael Caine for Sleuth, Laurence Olivier for Sleuth, Peter O'Toole for The Ruling Class, and Paul Winfield for Sounder. What do we think of this category?
I mean, it's cliche, but Brando's performance is one of the best of all time. So I have no problems with this win.
Yeah.
I don't even know who I'd vote for in second place. I think Caine is pretty decent in Sleuth.
Yeah. If I
Paul Winfield in Sounder is almost supporting, if I remember.
That's a supporting role. There's a middle chunk of that movie he's not in at all. He's it's mostly with Cicely Tyson and the family, and we don't see Paul Winfield for a long stretch. Right. He did not get in at the Golden Globes. And so I think just great love for that movie brought Paul Winfield a nomination, and then it got a Best Picture nomination.
Sure. I'm not mad he's here. It's just kind of unusual, but Brando is arguably supporting as well. So,
and I believe this is also, it wasn't on that list I looked at. I believe this is the first time in Oscar history where we get African Americans from the same movie nominated for actor and actress. I think this is the first time.
That makes sense. I can't think off the top of my head of any other
and
examples.
I don't think it happens again until Lawrence Fishburne and Angela Bassett for What's Love Got to Do with It in '94.
Yep.
I think this is the first time. I read that when we did that episode about Sounder. I think that was a piece of trivia I read.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
I mean, it
that's
doesn't
cool.
make sense. It just that's
Yeah.
I can't think of any other examples.
But it's neat that it happens for Sounder. It's a really great movie, and I'm happy that they both got in. And I, if I had gun to my head, I think I would pick Peter O'Toole as my second choice.
Okay, I haven't seen
Because
the ruling
I
class, so
don't.
I
The
can't speak
movie's
to it.
not great. He is
It's weird,
doing.
right?
He's very big and brash, and he plays different kinds of characters throughout the movie. He's like playing a version of Jesus Christ for the first hour, but then he
Okay.
plays other guys in the second half, and it's like a big Oscar caliber kind of role for him. So I guess I would pick him as my second place, but very happy that Marlon Brando is here and winning for The Godfather, one of the great performances of all time. I had some angry commenters in October. I made a YouTube video called The 10 Best Acting Wins of the 70s, and I put Marlon Brando as number 4, and people were upset that it wasn't number 1.
Okay.
But my thinking is it's not number 1 because he's just not in a lot of the movie. So
Sure. I mean, you know,
to be the number
again,
1 best acting win of the decade.
I made my thoughts about category fraud clear in that I don't have any. So
yeah. So I went with my favorite of my second. What was my third? My second favorite was Liza Minnelli for Cabaret, which we'll get to in a second. And my favorite, if I had to pick my number 1 favorite, it was Jack Nicholson for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think that's his best.
I mean, yeah.
Oscar of the 3. I think that's his best Oscar win, especially since he was nominated so much over the previous 6 years, and then it's the case where he finally won for the right role, for the right movie. Sometimes they win for the wrong one. Didn't happen for Nicholson.
Right. That's a good one.
And then we should also mention that Brando was not happy to be nominated here because he didn't show.
Right.
Sheen Littlefeather did. And that one of the top 10 most famous Oscar moments, would we say?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Is the Littlefeather refusal of Marlon Brando's Oscar due to the presentation of Native Americans in cinema? Is that what they were protesting?
Correct. I mean, the interesting thing is that it's not like a George C. Scott situation where Brando is refusing it because he doesn't like the idea of the Oscars. This is specifically a protest because of Hollywood's depiction of Native Americans on film. It's kind of something outside of either the movie he's winning for or the Oscars itself. It's really an indictment of Hollywood in general, which is pretty daring.
Mm-hmm. But then he's nominated again a year later for Last Tango in Paris, so it didn't bother the Academy that much.
I mean, they nominated George C. Scott, I think, immediately after he.
So George C. Scott wins Best Actor for Patton, and then the year later they nominate him for The Hospital.
Right.
Which is we talked about that film, and it's not a great movie, and he's not that great in it. But
sometimes he gets the Oscars like when you are kind of, you don't care about them. They kind of like that. I think it's interesting.
When you say you don't care about the Oscars, it's like Brendan Fraser saying he will not show up at the Golden Globes, but he gets in. They nominate him.
Right. I mean, or there's situations like where people like Joaquin Phoenix for so long, or, kind of like, I'm not about awards, man. But then he wins the Oscar, he shows up anyway. So.
Yeah, that joke at the Golden Globes for when he was there for Her, I want to say. And Tina Fey's like, well, he's anti-awards. Clearly he's, hi, Joaquin, there you are. Mm-hmm. And he's there for Her, which he was never going to win for. But yeah, so even though he's not there to accept it. So did he actually not, did the Academy take the award back? Did they not? I
have no idea what happens when you refuse an Oscar. I mean,
because I believe he accepted On the Waterfront, right?
I'm
was
sure
there.
I'm sure there was no issue for that. Yeah,
that was a later in life.
I wonder if they mailed it to him anyway. I don't know.
I don't know what they do with refused Oscars.
Right, they throw them out.
Send it to us.
right in the trash.
But no matter what, that's such a great performance. Even though he's not in the whole movie. That's one of the great examples in movie history of a performance that even though he's not in a whole lot of it, it lingers throughout the film. You're always thinking about him and what he's doing and his presence and how it has an effect on everyone else in the film. It's very much that kind of a performance, and such a unique approach to that character. He could have played that 10 different ways and he chose the right one.
I mean, people still do impressions of him to this day. It's just one of those performances that is just stuck. It's synonymous with film. You can't separate it.
So a great win, one of the best, also one of the best wins of the 70s, I think, in acting is Liza Minnelli for Cabaret. That's a great
Yeah.
win. If Diana Ross had been nominated the year after, if Lady Sings the Blues had come out in the spring of 73, I think she could have won over Glenda Jackson, right? In A Touch of Class. But the movie came out in the wrong
probably.
year.
I that's the thing is I think Diana Ross gives a really great dramatic performance in the movie. My problem with the performance is that so much of it is her playing Billie Holiday and being shown singing as Billie Holiday, who had a
Okay.
famously distinct voice, and Diana Ross sounds nothing like Billie Holiday and doesn't try to replicate her voice at all, which is
Okay.
kind of odd. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. You know, it's kind of like when Judy came out and Renee Zellweger sounded nothing like Judy Garland, but she still won the Oscar. I don't think it's an issue per se, but I think it's a little bit odd that she didn't. The attempt for that impression wasn't made at all. But I digress. She's still really good in the movie.
Yeah, I would actually, in this category, I could see any of these women. If there's one that I could remove from this list, it's Maggie Smith. Just because the movie she's in isn't great. It's okay. She makes the most of her role and performance and is very big and very theatrical. And I adore Maggie Smith. If there was one I could take, the other four I think have to be here. Those all make sense, especially Liv Ullmann.
Right. I haven't seen Travels with My Aunt, but the other four performances are all definitely worthy. And I think they made the right choice. I think Liza is unbelievable in Cabaret, and she's an amazing performer in general who deserves to have an Oscar.
This is her only nomination, right?
No, she was nominated
Liza
for the
Minnelli?
Sterile Cuckoo in 69. Right. So this is her second nomination.
She gets a nomination for Sterile Cuckoo, which I did watch before I started this podcast, and she's really great in that too. So I'm happy with that. But yeah, this seemed to be the right role at the right time, and it makes sense that she would win. And of course, they loved the movie, and it's just such a dazzling performance from beginning to end. Yeah. It's just one of the great acting wins of the decade. And if Cabaret had been 71 or 73, I think Diana Ross could have been a great winner too, or Ullman. Cicely Tyson is great in Sounder. It's a very understated, quiet performance. There's no big Oscar scene in that movie outside of her running to hug her husband.
I was going to say running to get her husband when he's returned back
that.
Home. I'm glad she has an Oscar nomination. So yeah.
And the fact that we have two African-American women in the same category is really cool that they did that.
Correct.
It was better late than ever. I'm happy that they got around to it after so many years, but both very worthy performances. And Maggie Smith, I believe, has 6 nominations in her long career. This is one of the lesser knowns. If you're a Maggie Smith super fan, you have to check it out. I had a guest on for that episode, will have dropped a few weeks ago, who really knew his Maggie Smith movies. And in our end segment about her career, he kept talking about so many movies of hers that I've never even heard of. And he was like, oh, she's great in this, she's great in this, and this from the 80s, this from the I'm like, okay, there's a lot of her work I still need to check out. And so happy she got in here. It puts the movie a little bit higher up. And when movie gets a nomination for art direction only or something, it doesn't stand out very well. But when you get into Best Actress, usually the movie has a little bit more of a long life. And so that's really great. And I love Ullman in The Emigrants. I wish she could win something for that, but it's just hard to beat Minnelli.
Right. I mean, she got the Golden Globe, so that's something.
She cherishes to this day.
Right.
I would. Golden Globe for The Emigrants. And I believe she only has one other nomination, Face to Face, later in the decade.
Yes.
Which I have not seen, Face to Face.
It's a Bergman movie. It's very depressing.
Maybe I watched it. I did a Summer of Bergman. I don't know if I saw that one. But
I didn't love it, but that's just me.
But Ullman was it this year? She got her honorary Oscar?
Correct. Yeah. Or just last year. It was recently.
Yeah. So that was cool. I'm happy that she got her Oscar finally. But Liza Minnelli, one of the great wins. Cabaret isn't the same without her. I think she makes that movie what it is. So
right. I've seen people say that she's just playing herself in that movie, and I completely disagree. I think the role is just perfect for her, and it maybe was catered around her abilities in terms of her singing and dancing for sure. But there's enough dramatic work in there that it's an incredible performance.
Yeah. One of the greats. Best Director does not go to Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather, although it easily could have. It goes to Bob Fosse for Cabaret. What do we think of that? What do we think of Fosse over Coppola.
It's so tricky because you watch Cabaret and you're kind of blown away specifically by the direction. The direction is what makes that movie. It's
Right.
not the writing. There's the performances, sure, but that's also has to do with the direction.
Mhm.
But it's really all about Fosse's vision and what he does with especially with the staged material, which is so different from the movie, completely different. So it's really hard to argue with him winning. I might actually give it to him over Coppola personally, even though I like The Godfather better. I mean, Cabaret and Godfather are both 10 out of 10 masterpieces. It's hard to argue with either one doing well at the Oscars, but I mean, I don't know. There's so much to laud and applaud about The Godfather. I think the Cabaret, so much of what is good about it falls entirely on Bob Fosse's shoulders.
So you wouldn't give it to John Boorman for Deliverance?
No.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's like The Godfather is one of the great movies of all time. I would put as a movie, it's above Cabaret for me. But yeah, the Fosse win here makes sense because I don't think that movie is anywhere close to what it is without Fosse. Whereas The Godfather, not to say that some other person could have made it as well as Coppola did, but I could see another person directing The Godfather and making it still really great. Whereas I feel like you can't just bring in anyone for Cabaret. That's a very distinct vision.
Yeah. And the thing about The Godfather, The Godfather also I've heard is quite different from the source material. I haven't read the novel, but what I've heard about the novel is that it's kind of like, I don't want to say trashy exactly, but it's definitely more like pulpy, kind of like an airport novel almost. And I think the screenplay, which Francis Ford Coppola won an Oscar for, obviously, for this movie, really does a lot of work in crafting the source material into something more elevated and polished. And the direction helps in that, obviously, but I think the Academy got it right, rewarding Cabaret for its direction and Godfather for its writing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like Cabaret wouldn't have made as much sense in screenplay.
No, and it's a good screenplay, but it isn't as highly achievable as the Godfather screenplay.
And again, I would love to know the final tally. I mean, this could be really close. I feel like Coppola was probably close to winning Best Director.
Well, again, and precursors were different back then, but Coppola won DGA and the Golden Globe.
And the Golden Globe, yeah. So, and Cabaret, again, it came out in February of 72, so it had been around a while. If The Godfather was set March of 72 and Cabaret was like November of 72, in some ways this sweep would make even more sense.
Yeah.
But the fact that they both came out a year before, they had time to think about this and process like Best Director. So there was just, I think Fosse probably didn't win by a lot of votes, but he won in there over Coppola, and I don't think the other three had a slightest chance.
Right. I guess the other thing you could say is like Bob Fosse was already a legend of stage at that point. He probably already had half a dozen Tony Awards. So people who are, in the know about that might want to give him an Oscar when they have the chance. And Coppola, this was probably his first.
People didn't know Coppola as well.
First movie, right? He wrote Patton, and he won an Oscar.
Wrote Patton and won an Oscar. He made The Rain People. He made Finian's Rainbow. But he wasn't a known commodity really yet in 73. Right. It's not until I'd say after The Candidate and Godfather 2 where he's a little bit more of a known person. So that makes sense too. The one change I would put Alfred Hitchcock here for Frenzy over Joseph L. Mankiewicz for Sleuth, but the other two absolutely should be there. Jan Troell for The Emigrants, John Boorman for Deliverance. I know I like Deliverance more than you did, but I think a lot of the reason that movie works so well is the direction of it. I think the directing is really good.
I will say the direction is the best part of it. I don't like the screenplay. I don't like.
And isn't it only nominated for the two? Deliverance? Isn't it just picture and director? Is that it?
And editing?
Oh, to get editing?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
But usually movies don't. Usually when you get those top two, you get an acting nomination, you get a screenplay.
Right.
It's weird
the only Best Picture nominee that didn't get a screenplay nomination.
Because if Deliverance had been an original script, it would have gotten in.
Yes, absolutely. Because every other, all five of the nominees for Best Picture were adapted. So
yeah,
crowded.
So it was just very crowded. So if that guy hadn't written that book, that's how it worked out. But yeah, so that's a great category too. I love that Fosse win. And then Best Picture. Do you think Cabaret had a shot to win Best Picture over The Godfather? Or do you think it was always going to be The Godfather?
I think it was super close. I mean, night of, I probably would at this point. You get to Best Picture, and Cabaret has won 8 Oscars, and The Godfather has won 2. So it really is like there's a lot of situations recently where movies win Best Picture and then like a screenplay award and maybe 1 or 2 others, maybe. That's kind of a recent phenomenon. This is back in the era of movies winning much more awards if they win Best Picture. And like picture and director were super tied back then. It was really quite rare to win Best Picture, but not director. So I probably would think going into Best Picture that Cabaret was about to win, but The Godfather is also, the biggest film of the year. It had already won a bunch of Golden Globes, so it was like proven as an awards player.
Yeah. More of
So
like the dramatic epic film of the two.
Right. It makes more sense on paper as a Best Picture winner. And it's one of those situations where I love Cabaret so much, but I'm kind of glad it didn't win Best Picture because it would have hurt its legacy. It would have always been the movie that beats The Godfather. You never want to be that movie. You never want to be the movie that beats Citizen Kane or whatever. You don't want to be that movie.
It had the perfect run because it won 8 Oscars. It did very well. It won Best Director. Everyone remembers the Liza Minnelli win for Best Actress. But you're right. If it had won Best Picture over The Godfather, that's what Cabaret's legacy would be. It won Best Picture over what is for many people the greatest movie of all time. So that would have not have been good for its legacy. It makes sense that it didn't get picture.
It's very similar to it's very similar to the La La Land Moonlight year, where it's, a musical wins a bunch of technical awards, wins Best Director, wins Best Actress, and doesn't win Best Picture, loses to a movie that won Adapted Screenplay and a male acting award, and that's it.
I still, man, how cool would that have been if Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway had come out and just said Moonlight?
Yeah,
it would have been one of the great, because I think at that night, I'm like, I think it's going to be La La Land for picture. I just was feeling it. I was like, Moonlight has a lot of love, but I just don't think it's just enough to get it over the top. So when they said La La Land, I was like, yep, that makes sense. Okay, moving on to the next year.
Is like, it would have still been exciting and, a big headline if Moonlight had won properly. But because it had that mistake happen, that became the story.
That was the story, which is unfortunate, but it's one of the great wins for picture of the last decade for sure. And I'm just so happy that The Godfather pulled off Best Picture, that its sequel, which is also great, gets Best Picture 2 years later, and finally wins for Coppola Best Director. He had to make that and The Conversation in the same year, and they're like, okay, we'll give you a Best Director win.
I know. But, and the thing about Coppola is that he and Fosse go up against each other for Best Director 3 times. So it's just like, because they're both nominated in Lenny, and then for the Lenny Godfather 2 year, and then
79 for All That Jazz
and Apocalypse Now. So
that's crazy. That's so interesting. I forget that Bob Fosse's nominated for Best Director for Lenny with Hoffman. 74 is a dynamite year. It's
wild,
crazy. Like I looked. There's some really good stuff coming up here on the podcast for 73, but 74 is a banger here. I'm like, we are not stopping this, Brian, until we get through 74 at least. We got to get to 2024 to talk about all of those amazing releases, including Lenny, including Godfather 2, and The Conversation, and so many great movies that year. But would it be weird now if we were talking about our 2 frontrunners for Best Picture and they had come out the previous February and March?
Yes, it would have been so weird. I think there's nothing that world of...
Is that over?
Awards movies are so fixated in time and place. I mean, I can't even think of an award movie that came out before. Coda came out in August, but it was streaming, so that's a little different.
Probably the most recent example is
October.
Get Out came out in February of 2017.
Yes, and I think that came pretty close to winning.
And that wins Best Original Screenplay. That's like the only example of that in the last 10 years, I want to say. I
can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Before April? Like a movie doing that well?
Right. So weird. Black Panther came out in
February. Black Panther. So. That came out in February. Yeah, so those are the 2. And then probably the most famous example of winning everything is Silence of the Lambs from the early 90s.
Valentine's Day.
But wouldn't it be weird, like between now and the ceremony in mid-March, if we got 2 movies that came out that were going to be major Oscar players in the spring of 2024?
Right. I mean, when I went to like Sundance 2021 and I saw Coda, in January of that year. It ended, and I was like, well, that was very nice. But if you told me right then that was gonna win Best Picture 14 months later, I would not have believed you.
Wait, you mean they had a Sundance in the spring of
It was
2021, like in
virtual.
person? Oh, virtual.
No, virtual.
So
So
it played
I
virtual.
watched it from my couch at like 10 a.m. I was like,
Oh,
oh, that was
okay.
nice. And then
That's
14 months
nice.
later, it
You
wins Best
weren't when that
Picture.
ended, you weren't like that's going to be
No
nominated
way.
for Best Picture.
No way. What I thought was maybe Marley Madden will get nominated. That's it.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. I was totally thinking she was going to get in for that
Yeah.
movie because of her win for Children of a Lesser God and her being so great in Coda. I
Yeah.
was like, she's going to
Exactly.
get in, and they passed her over. I couldn't believe it.
It's
But
wild stuff.
it's weird to think like when this drops, we'll have just gotten back from Sundance. It's weird to think, are we going to see a movie at Sundance that could be a Best Picture
Exactly.
nominee? And which
Didn't
one
happen
will it
last
be?
year. So,
Like, how do you
or no,
know? How do you
well,
predict?
last year was Coda, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year, rather.
I'm looking at the list of all the. There's nothing that's like popping out at me as like, oh, this could be a big Oscar movie. Like I can't. It's hard to tell this early. Like, how do you know?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I never would have looked at Coda on paper and gone, well, that's winning Best Picture.
Yeah,
So,
you thought maybe that could be a crowd pleaser or people might like it, but you wouldn't
sure.
think that could win Best
Right. And it
Picture.
won all those prizes at Sundance, but that also was a smaller Sundance than usual. So things were weird.
Right.
So who knows?
Well,
Whatever.
we will see. But yeah, great picture category here. Sounder gets in, didn't get the directing nom, but we get Sounder gets in for picture. I love that The Emigrants, a 3-hour plus foreign film, gets nominated for Best Picture when it won Best Foreign Film, right? The year before.
It didn't win. It
Oh, it didn't win.
lost
What?
to, I think, Garden of the Fitzy Contis.
Oh,
Is that
that's right. But it was
Yeah.
nominated.
Yes.
So it's nominated the year before for Best Foreign Language Film and then is nominated a year later in Best Picture. That shows you how strong the movie is.
Right.
And was my favorite discovery of the year. That was a movie I was dreading for weeks. I'm like, okay, watch this movie.
It's a long
It got
one.
a picture nomination, Brian. I gotta watch it. Cody said he liked it.
So I'm glad you take my taste into account.
let's get Cody on to talk about this movie. It's probably going to be kind of a slog, but maybe it'll be good. And boy, did that just knock me out. So great.
It's a good one.
I love that movie. And then Deliverance, I think, is a surprising Best Picture nominee. I could have seen that getting director, but not picture.
It's kind of a genre film. We talked about this on the Deliverance episode, but I wonder if it's because Cabaret and The Godfather were such like the story of the year in terms of money and acclaim and blah blah blah. So that probably sucked up so many votes that the next three could be kind of not smaller movies exactly, but like a little bit atypical in terms of what the Academy usually goes for.
Well, it would have made sense because it was the number 2 biggest movie of the year. What it would have made sense, kind of like an airport nomination a couple years before, instead of Deliverance, the Poseidon Adventure getting a picture nomination makes sense.
It would if we were looking back with all the other nominations it has, plus it probably came close to winning supporting actress, that would have made total sense.
Right. But yeah, those are some great nominees there, and I think the rightful movie won. The Godfather. Anything else you want to say about this ceremony, Cody, before I move on to my favorite movies of the year?
I don't think so. It's a pretty good year.
Yeah. In a year from now, we get to talk about The Streaker. That'll be fun.
Oh, thank God. I've been waiting.
We've been waiting. What year is that? Brian can talk about it on Film at 50. So as we always do each year, the end of our season finale of the movies of 72, I give my list of my favorite films I looked at for the podcast. I try to watch movies outside of the podcast, and so I picked one, and that's in my runners up. I really liked, it's slight, but I really liked Napoleon and Samantha, a Disney movie starring Michael Douglas and the film debut of Jodie Foster. And it's kind of like a fun little adventure caper. A lot of it is in the woods, and it's got some fun kind of relationship storylines and has a big motorcycle chase at the end of Michael Douglas I found amusing. So I'd put that as like number 20, but that's a movie we did not talk about this year that I thought was kind of fun.
Is that a big animal movie?
Yeah, I want to say
for some reason that's what my brain's saying.
Might be a scene with a bear.
Okay.
But my other runners up are Boxcar Bertha by Martin Scorsese, his last kind of smaller film until he does Mean Streets, and which we'll get to in 73, which is very exciting. His first kind of like the movie that really puts him on the map is Mean Streets. Butterflies Are Free is on my runners up. I enjoyed it. Don't need to talk about it ever again.
Sure.
Superfly was great. I really enjoyed Superfly. I guess it almost got in for an Oscar nomination, as we talked about, but didn't quite make it. Not a great movie, but I think a very important horror film of the year. Wes Craven's The Last House on the Left, I think, is a very influential
that
movie.
One's tough. That's
it's
a tough
watch, but I would put it on here just as a huge Wes Craven fan, and it kind of gave him a start in the industry, in the genre, and I think it's a very influential movie. A lot of the horror films we talked about this year were not great. You were on for Vampire Circus. Remember that? And we talked about
I remember.
I want to say we had 5 or 6 episodes of horror films that were just they kind of felt like they could have been made in 1964.
Yeah,
I liked that Last House felt like this was clearly made in 71, 72. I like that.
Yes, and it definitely feels like a preview of like what's to come for the genre, especially for the 70s.
It's kind of a preview of Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming up here, and some of these other kind of dirtier horror films, many of which I love. And then I have Sounder, I thought was really wonderful, and Lady Sings the Blues, both of which I looked at in October. Really enjoyed The Heartbreak Kid. I really like The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, starring Paul Newman, kind of an episodic Western with him, a movie I expected very little from, but I found that engaging. And then finally, The Getaway, which was almost like it was very close to number 10.
Yeah.
But The Getaway with Steve McQueen, directed by Sam Peckinpah, really terrific action thriller from the end of the year. Big money maker, and like you can see why it did well. Like it's a very like audience friendly action film with 2 strong leads, Steve McQueen and Ali McGraw. That takes me to my top 10 of the year. Before I get to my top 10, was there anything you wanted to share? Any like movies that you loved in 72? Like do you like what would be in your top 5? Like, do you have
I liked Sleuth way more than you. That's up in my top 5.
Sleuth is not anywhere here.
Yeah, so that's mine. I also
that's your big one.
Quite enjoyed. It's not my top 10, but it's up there. I really like Shaft's Big Score.
I watched that.
Shaft. It's a fun one. It's kind of a lesser version of the original, but there's this really amazing helicopter chase at the end that is just astounding action choreography. Really liked that.
I'm glad you mentioned Shaft's Big Score. I watched that. I rented on Amazon Prime for like $3 or whatever because I wanted to see it, because Shaft, I think, made my top 10 of 71. I really love Shaft.
That's so good.
And there's one more to come. There's 73, Shaft in Africa.
Yeah, that's not
as good.
Unfortunately. we went through all of them a few years ago, and that's a disappointment. The worst, I mean, like one of the best things about Shaft is that it takes place in like 70s New York. So to take him out of that just doesn't make any sense.
It's like why I never, even as a kid, I didn't like Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, because I found what was interesting about the character was having him just a fish out of water in the United States, but when we put him in Africa, I'm like, I don't like this as much. But Shaft's Big Score, that would be like number 21, 22. That was really close. That was a good one. I looked at it yesterday, putting the list. I was like, oh, I like that, but didn't have a lot of longevity. Same with Blackula. I really like Blackula, but does it make my top 20? I was like, oh, it's not quite there, but it was entertaining for sure.
Good title.
Blackula, which also has a sequel, 73 sequel, which I don't know if we'll do an episode of, but Scream is called Scream Blackula Scream. So I'll probably watch it. I don't know if we'll do an episode. So my top 10, I always try to pick a movie for my number 10 slot that is the one that nobody knows, that was a discovery, that wasn't nominated for Oscars, that was just, I thought was really strong. And my pick this year for number 10 is Prime Cuts. Have you heard of Prime Cuts?
No, I haven't.
It's the film debut of Sissy Spacek, and it's Lee Marvin and Gene Hackman. It's just like this tiny little this little movie, came out in June of 72, and it's got some power in that thing. There's some scenes. There's a scene of Lee Marvin and Sissy Spacek running away from this giant tractor that's trying to mow them down and kill them in the middle of this field, and it's like one of the more suspenseful scenes of any movie I'd never seen before in the podcast that we looked at last summer. And it's just a really rich kind of drama thriller. It's got some suspense at the end, a shootout scene, and not like a special movie, but it was one of the 5 or 10 like that I expected nothing. that I put on because, oh, it's Lee Marvin, Gene Hackman, Sissy Spacek. Let's do this one. I needed one more episode for July, and I was really impressed. I really liked it. And it's a movie no one's heard of. Prime cut. Like, it's 85 minutes long.
I was just gonna say, I
very
pulled up
short.
the runtime. That's amazing.
It's a very quick watch, and Spacek is great, and she plays this very sexy kind of like, it's kind of an ingenue kind of role that you wouldn't expect from like the actress who would give us Badlands and Carrie. It's a very different kind of a character for her, and I enjoyed it a lot. It's really good.
Cool.
So that's like the big discovery, like that most people don't know about. Number 9, Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. I love that film. It's terrific. A win for best foreign language film. Number 8 is What's Up, Doc, a movie I'd never seen before. I really enjoyed that with Barbara Streisand and Madeline Kahn and Ryan O'Neal. Peter Bogdanovich directed it. It's a zany romantic comedy, really a lot of fun. Number 7 is The Poseidon Adventure, which I had also never seen and enjoyed the hell out of that movie. Would have been a trip to see that in a theater, kind of like I talked about with Deliverance, too. Like, to see that opening weekend in 72 with a big audience would have been really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine like the effects in Poseidon Adventure in 72 for people. That would have been really mind-blowing. And then we just get to a bunch of movies we talked about, Cody. Number 6, The Candidate.
Yeah, that's up
Number 5, Frenzy. Number 4, Deliverance. Number 3, The Emigrants.
All right.
So if
I'm going to credit myself, my charming personality, with how much you like those movies. So
if I had really terrible guests on for those episodes, would they have made my top 10?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're welcome.
So your influence, of course, played a role there. Even for Deliverance, which you didn't like.
Right, but it gave you something to talk about.
I mean, it wasn't, sometimes it's hard for me to make those choices about, 3, 4, 5, 6. That feels right to me. Frenzy maybe is not good enough to be number 5 of the year as a movie overall, but I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. I loved a lot of what he was doing in that. He was being very playful with the camera and with some of the ideas he was playing. Like, I just feel like after Topaz and Torn Curtain, which are deadly dull, so bad.
Yikes.
Frenzy is just, it's a return to form for him, the last return to form he had before his death that I just really appreciate. So had to put Frenzy there. I really enjoyed The Candidate with Robert Redford. Great performance. He would have been a worthy candidate for Best Actor that year for The Candidate.
Absolutely.
I liked him in that.
Hey, yeah.
And then Deliverance, which I like more than you did. I really had a great time with Deliverance. That was after I'd watched like 5 or 6 movies for the podcast. It really disappointed me. I wasn't really connecting to anything. And then I put Deliverance on, and I was just like, from the first scene, I was really taken with it. So I really like that one. And then the best film I looked at for this podcast this last year that I had not seen before is The Emigrants, for sure. That's number 3.
Yeah.
That's a great movie that I would maybe watch again before I watch The New Land, which I just am like, do I want to devote 7 hours, Brian?
That's 7.5 hours of movies. That's a lot of movie.
Might be a bit much.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's still had, like, when did we watch that? September? Like, it's still, I can still see a lot of that movie in my head. Like, it's still very fresh in my mind months and months later. A lot of the movies I talked about for this podcast, I had to like look up the schedule again. I'm like, what did I watch in November?
What was that?
But not The Immigrants. Immigrants has stayed with me. And so I'm so happy. If it hadn't been nominated for picture, I still would have looked at it for actress. If it hadn't have gotten into those top 3 categories, I might have skipped it. I mean,
sure. And
but
I mean,
like,
just to get into just foreign language nominations at the time, you never know what you're going to get with that, but that's a good one.
So that's a good one. So yeah, and then shocker, number 2, Cabaret, number 1, The Godfather.
Yep, same here. I mean, it's just kind of like, duh. There's nothing else it could be. I'm sorry. I know people want to be, contrarian and say those are not the 2 best movies of the year, possibly, but there's just kind of no denying it in terms of how they're made and their cultural impact and blah, blah, blah. It's just immaculate.
I am not the podcaster, the film critic, the guy you go to for the contrarian, like, the wild card pick for number 1. I'm not the guy to say Cabaret and then The Godfather, but the number 1 choice of the year we're going to talk about it, is Last House on the Left. Let me talk about what, like, that's not going to be me.
Right, exactly.
You know?
I mean, the thing is, they're undoubtedly the most influential films of the year. So even if you don't like them personally, you can't say that they're not the most important, because they are.
I would be curious to look up some top 10 lists of critics for 72 and see, are they all Cabaret and Godfather on top, or do some of them have other choices? I bet some of them have other choices at the time.
Right, because there's not, again, they were financial hits, they were critical hits, they were commercial hits, they were award hits, they were just hits in every sense of the word. The ideal reaction to a film right there. And and there were two of them.
But it was kind of an interesting year to do this podcast because it started so strong. I mean, we talked about Cabaret, I want to say it was like January 5th. Like, wow. we like said Happy New Year's, and then 2-3 nights later I'm watching Cabaret for the very beginning of the year's podcast episodes, and then a month later we did The Godfather. So like by mid-February we had done those. We had done What's Up Doc, which was wonderful. We did some really great stuff right at the beginning, and then there was this long period of some not so great titles. Very excited looking at the schedule for 73. It's some great big Oscar players just scattered all throughout the year. There's not like this window of 2 months at the beginning of all the great stuff and then nothing for 6 months. They're kind of scattered all throughout the calendar year for 73, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah, how did it feel to watch, the two best films of the 72 year in like the first month of the year? And no, it's just all downhill from there.
I kind of knew it at the time. Yeah. I knew come March 1st, I was like, I think the best of this year is over. And I'm like, but there were, 20 plus movies, probably more than that we talked about on the podcast these last 12 months that I hadn't seen. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll get some big surprises. Sadly, there weren't very many. I had seen Frenzy before. I had seen The Candidate before. I knew Poseidon Adventure was going to be great. And I felt pretty strongly about Deliverance. So there were, like of the top 10, like the only one that was like a surprise was Prime Cut.
Yeah.
Like everything else I kind of expected to like or love. The Emigrants, I thought I was going to have a much worse time, and ended up not happening, which was great. But it was a Best Picture nominee, so I was like, well, to get into Best Foreign Language Film and then a year later get into Picture, it's got to be pretty good, right? Yeah. So I'm hoping for 73 there's going to be more surprises, more movies I don't see coming that I love, and then I can come on here and recommend, and more movies that the listener might not have heard of yet that I'm gonna champion. That's what I'm hoping, we get more of those.
Yeah, that's the best
in the coming months. But but there were some lulls for the 72 season. 73 and especially 74 are gonna be really exciting. Just a lot of great titles. You got
some good stuff
coming up, so get ready. That's the end, Cody. Anything else
All right.
gotta say? Thank you for anyone who sticks with me year to year, all of these episodes, 52 episodes a year, talking about 1 year in film. It's been my privilege to really dig into the year of 1972 with all of you. Had such amazing guests in the last year, and no one better than Cody Dericks.
Oh, whoa, Cody, I win?
Cody, this has been such a blast talking all of these movies with you over the last year. And the fact that 4 of these we talked about and then they showed up in my top 10. Clearly I had some of my best hours on the podcast in the last year with you. So thanks for being here. This was fun.
Well, again, I don't want to say it's because I was on the episode that you like the movie so much, but
so as we wrap up here, Cody, tell our listeners where they can find you online.
So thank you so much, Mr. Rowe, for having me on for some great films in 72 and some not so great films that were still fun to talk about. You can find me all over the internet at Cody Monster 91. That's on Twitter and Letterboxd and everywhere else. And by the time this comes out, Sundance will be over, so I can't say follow me for Sundance stuff.
No, Sundance will be over when this drops at the end of January.
Hopefully I made it out of Utah safely.
Hopefully we've met each other in person by the time this drops. Would be fun.
Absolutely.
I don't know what we'll say to each other. Just nod and.
Right. We definitely haven't had hours of conversation before, so it'll be really tough.
We won't know what to say. No, it'll be fun. And then of course, any look at the list. I'm putting together the list. If there's anything that came out in 73 that really sparks your imagination, makes you want to come back, let me know. I've put together a preliminary list all the way through December of like what I'm planning to do. And as I said, every month there's at least one big title. There were a few months for 72 where it was like 4 episodes of movies that nobody's heard of. That's not the case for 73. Every month there's at least one, and usually 2 or 3 kind of big titles. So I'm excited to get to those. So thanks for being here, Cody. Thanks to all of you for listening and sticking with us all the way to this season finale episode. We'll be back next week with Last Tango in Paris, and we're getting into the films of 1973. You can find us at filmat50.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram. Check out my YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video, for all things Oscars. And until next time, as always, 50 never looked this good.